at the Eastern Kingdom Alliance's location. 10 years later, this world was catastrophically destroyed by the 5 great sins, annihilated, in a horrific way. And to prevent that destruction, I became their patron. After reading the documents in hand, Alon Palacio rubbed his chin in weariness. Helpless, he hadn't expected things to be this messy. It turned out Alon Palacio wasn't from this world. He was a transmigrant from the modern world, from an office slave working 78 hours a week to suddenly appearing in a fantasy world as a noble's son. He scoffed to himself, sounds great, right? But arriving in another world isn't like your old one. Alon held up a book full of tiny text, clueless, asking, what is this? I don't understand, shouldn't you be able to read in another world? The family servant then said, sir, you re-holding it upside down. Seeing the lavish meal stretching to the door, he ate heartily. To his surprise, it was delicious. The maid bowed and asked, have you finished eating, sir? I'll prepare your bath before bed. Alon soaked in the bath, washed and scrubbed by the maids, feeling blissful, eating and playing every day, doing nothing. His face shone, stars seemed to sparkle. He thought, this is great, being a count's son is pretty comfortable. Except that I have no idea where I actually am. Suddenly the maid spoke, tomorrow the 2 young masters will return, please sleep early. Alon wondered, the 2 young masters? The maid answered, yes, young Master Leo and young Master Tonio. She looked puzzled, as if he didn't know the Palacio family. Alon froze, remembering, wait, Palacio, that name rings eerily familiar. He ran his hands through his hair, making the 2 maids beside him panic. Oh, master. His face in the water showed worry and fear. Don't tell me this is Psychedelia. Psychedelia, a game Alon Palacio had played before. This is the game I used to sneak play at work, a turn-based ARG. Once the 5 great sins appear, everything starts to collapse. Wrath, greed, sloth, lust, and purgation. From noble towns to kingdoms, all are devastated. The Palacio Count's family is a prime example beyond saving. The household is filth. Eldest Leo Palacio runs a brothel. Younger Tonio Palacio runs drugs. They only show up in side quests before the main plot begins. He helplessly knelt to the ground. And now he understood, I'm right at that spot. Side quest 1, investigate the Palacio Count of Asteria Count involved in prostitution, drug trafficking, and running the Avalon Underground. When playing, he thought the mansion felt so gloomy, but might as well check it out. Looking at the castle before him, Alon sighed helplessly. Oh God, it's Palacio, the first house the 5 sins destroy like this. And recalling the side quest gives decent expa for the character I inhabit is Alon Palacio, the 3rd son of the Palacio house. At night, Alon lay on the large, empty bed, clasping his hands in front of him. He prayed, please let me return to being an office slave working 78 hours, anything. Holding a purple flower, tears streamed down his cheeks. He knew that despite living well now, knowing the world would explode in 10 years felt worse than being in debt for half a year. He was angry. Why did I transmigrate and get no buffs at all? Other houses have skills and privileges, but me, nothing. Thinking of the word privilege, Alon Palacio sprang up. Wait, privilege, right? I know exactly what will happen in 10 years, which means I know the future. He suddenly found a solution. Then just eliminate the causes of destruction first, right? So to live peacefully as a noble, I decided to reform the 5 greatest sinners. Still, he had some worries. He thought that since they were young now, they might still be saved. Right? Not sure about performing though. 2 months later, someone reported to Alon Palacio, I rescued orphans being experimented on at the Eastern Camp and put a girl named Yusha in charge of the orphanage's name is Yvonne, Alon's personal guard. Alon Palacio said, my eyes don't deceive me, she truly is very capable. Yes sir. Yvonne hesitated and asked, but that's a compliment, right? Since the young master shows no emotion, I can't tell. I guess so. Alon gave a desperate smile anyway. Yvonne, I'm counting on you. Yvonne was helpless. He still found this expression hard to get used to. Looking at his face in the mirror, Alon pulled his mouth into a smile. Thinking the facial expression module hasn't fully downloaded. I told you. Only the skin seems improperly imported. Yvonne awkwardly scratched his head anyway. Thanks, young master. Yvonne was a rare loyal supporting character in Psychedelia, a top-tier side role chosen by the gods. That I met him early, so I recruited him. Yvonne, chin on hand, asked, I heard you rescued Yusha that time. Alon replied, yes, that's right. Now I see why you kept an eye on her. Yvonne's face darkened, even to me, someone who's lived as a mercenary for years. That girl seemed far from ordinary. Yvonne looked at Yusha in the cell. Her vast power radiated from her. He was stunned. The power was enormous, yet she was imprisoned. Incomprehensible. Yvonne asked again, why didn't you bring her back? Leaving her offers no benefit. Good point. Alon had his own calculations. It seemed odd not to use such power, but leaving her be was also part of his plan. Yusha was no ordinary person. She's a blood variant race who made a pact with an indescribable otherworldly entity and uses its power. She becomes the embodiment of the sin of wrath among the 5 great sins, slaughtering hundreds of thousands. He proudly thought, but if I give her a peaceful childhood, perhaps wrath will never awaken. Good decision made though, thinking that. When answering Even, he put on a dangerous look and said, "Actually, it's just because. It's not time yet." Even panicked at that "not yet, it's not time." Alon said mysteriously, "Yes, keep this secret, and send more funds to support the camp." "Understood, sir." "Oh, and this letter, give it to Yushi, it's just a note." Even exclaimed, "You even wrote a letter? How thoughtful, sir. This is a letter of concern after surviving dangerous events like bio experiments. I thought it best to help her calm down," Even said. "You even wrote such a letter, I'll make sure it gets to her." Watching Even spur his horse away, Alon wondered if the letter would soothe the girl. Worth a try anyway. The real meaning hidden in the note, I had the explanation, repeated to me 10 times while replaying. Perhaps it's a spell that a close friend of the Archbishop considered necessary. "O spirit of wrath, calm yourself, the suffering of darkness, the oblivion of light, one wish, one place to belong." That incantation originally activates in the Wrath storyline. It's too late. In the game, battles usually only start after failure, but now it's 10 years earlier. Maybe there's still time. Alon Palacio stretched warily. One of the 5 harbingers of doom is already settled. Is it the next one's turn? A spell to befriend monsters sounds ridiculous, but with those cultists who worship otherworldly beings, it might actually work. Thinking like fanatics in Team 8. Sunlight through the window fell on Alon. He thought, those extremists have no logic anyway. The girl Yuchia read the letter. Even sensed the magic around her was still unnaturally strong, and those eyes were empty, devoid of feeling. The girl Yuchia suddenly asked, "The sender of that letter is Sir Alon Palacio, right?" Suddenly she flared up, eyes blazing red. "Why didn't he take me?" Even panicked. "What?" He stammered an explanation. "Well, that." Seeing Yuchia's sharp gaze, Even thought the manifestation and Hadu's power only achievable at master level. He recalled Alon Palacio's words, "It's not time yet." Even panicked and stammered to Yuchia, "I told you, it's because it's not time yet." After hearing that, she withdrew her power and calmly replied, "Understood. And remember this, the suffering of darkness, the oblivion of light, one wish, one place to belong." Yuchia hugged the letter, smiled. There, a promise only the master knows. Watching, Even realized, "I understand now. The will of the master, the daughter of the weeping demon, the sin of wrath." Yuchia will remember. Back with Alon Palacio, lying in bed, he was cheerful. "As for me, I'm still enjoying a long, prosperous, full day." Looking at the bright moon outside, he thought even the moon sided with him today. Must try harder. Alon Palacio knocked over a pile of books. One struck him on the head. In that pile he couldn't find anything useful. Seriously. Finding a third master is such a hassle. Even ran in from outside. "A young master, the second child you mentioned, has also been rescued." Alon had a bump on his head and still held several books. He asked so. Treated kindly, gently. Even confirmed, of course, after being rescued from the illegal slave market. Suddenly the door was kicked open. Someone entered wearing a terrifying grin. "It's Aaron. So this person is the Count's second son, Tonio Palacio." Palacio. Tonio poked Alon on the head with his elbow. Cheerfully, "Illiterate boy with so many books, weren't you saying you'd study lately?" Seeing Alon silent, he turned cold and threatened. "When your brother speaks, you answer." Alon angrily thought, every day is a bad scene. How did Aaron put up with this before? If it were up to me, I'd fight back. Suddenly Alon knelt, hanging his head, and sincerely said he needed to use the study, so he excused himself. Tonio Palacio smiled slyly and stamped his foot on Alon's head. "Know your place." A dagger sliced past Tonio Palacio's face and plunged into the wall, leaving cracks. A voice rang out, "You pests are making a racket, huh?" Tonio Palacio spun around angrily. "What now?" The one who threw the dagger spoke. "I don't want to see blood this early, so both of you disappear." This is the remaining one of the 3 Palacio brothers, the eldest son of the Count's family, Palacio Leo. Before anything, the eldest and the second son greeted each other by grabbing throats and pointing blades, both faces showing a terrifying look. Neither yielding. "Hey, when you get to the study, you should ditch that common scent. Don't give off that nasty narcotics smell, and while I'm still being polite, get lost." At that moment Alon Palacio crawled away from the place. The Palacio Count family, in the game, were just a quickly vanishing side character. Side quest 1. Investigate the Palacio Count of the Kingdom Mysterious. The Count is tied to prostitution, drug trafficking, and runs the underground Avalon. Their power is greater than I thought. So the 2 insolent brothers fiercely fight over the headship, the underworld boss, king of prostitution, and the opium king who runs the organizations, and a massive narcotics conglomerate. Alon Palacio crawled out slowly, followed by Even, moving as lightly as possible without making a sound. Alon thought to himself that he'd never touch those damned lives. Inside the study was chaos. Outside, Even rubbed the bump on Alon's head while Alon gripped his hands in hopeful relief. "I'll live happily as a weak, useless, illegitimate child." Alon warily hugged the chair. Even said beside him, "Hey, that second child isn't ordinary either." Alon gloomily asked, "Huh?" Even saw Alon listless and exhausted, and thought seriously, how could someone like that find secret biological experiments elsewhere in the illegal slave market to rescue those children? What for, really? Just worrying about himself is hard enough. A gloomy sky loomed over Alon Palacio. He's utterly drained. Even spoke up Crip in general. Young master is truly different. This child they just found was sent straight to the orphanage. Alon massaged his head and thought, you mean that child wasn't ordinary? Not just extraordinary, but at a world-destroying level. The Allied Kingdom is formed from many nations. The one rescued from the illegal slave market was from the Kalian Kingdom, the most central kingdom. Psychedelia's second final boss, Deuce Malian, was sold into slavery, tortured and displaced many times, becoming the sin of sloth among the 5 great sins, ravaging kingdoms in the most horrific ways. It's the arc that terrifies the most players for its brutality. Alon Palacio held his teacup with trembling hands and thought, contrary to the nickname sloth. He's diligent, so I kept telling Ivan to treat him well. He felt tired. The old descriptions are truly insane. Alon tried to appear calm, but his shaking hand holding the teacup showed his fear. He said that sending to the orphanage is just because it's not time yet indeed. So the letter to Miss Yusha was about the second child. Yusha, sleep well. I sleep well too. Today you used me as a sacrifice quite a bit. Interesting, right? Sometimes I want to exchange letters, if possible send them to me. And the child I sent this time? Alon Palacio replied indifferently, yes, along with mundane stories to get acquainted. I said I sent a slightly weak child, so take good care of it. Shift scene to a boy in tattered clothes standing in the shadows. Suddenly someone stepped toward DSU. You, redone for. The traces caused by that thing was at the Black Goat. On Deuce's hand were terrifying scratches. The one speaking to Deuce was Yuchia. The girl smiled eerily. The great moon god has chosen someone like you. Congratulations. She demonstrated her power to Deuce. So feel the gifted power and awaken your strength. Yuchia held out her hand to Deuce and said, if you are wholly loyal and follow only me, you will be able to take revenge. A wave of power enveloped Deuce as Yusha raised the handwritten letter and laughed. Then, with a gentle greeting, I should send the first reply. Cut to scene. As Alon Palacio lay exhausted in a pile of books, wondering where the third boss was, even burst in big news. The second kid, no, young master. Alon Palacio's expression turned serious. He was shocked. That bastard is dead. Dead. In the funeral scene, 2 girls sat around the head of the Palacio house, cooing, my lord count, when will this end? I'm so sleepy, I'm hungry. Alon thought helplessly. Drugs and prostitutes at his son's grand funeral, chaotic like a dark fantasy. Seeing Tonio Palacio lying in the coffin, Alon wondered, but Tonio went missing so early. This death setup seems odd. In the game, after suffering for years, you finally kill that bug and the body becomes the clear hair. The Palacio count, pretending to weep that he died after long suffering. And now that face, Alon wanted to tear it off, watching Leo Palacio's expression. He guessed the culprit was certainly Leo or Leo's faction, since only the 5 great sins needed to be dealt with. A year later, the heir's disappearance and Leo's takeover of the drug business made the Count family increasingly peaceful. During that time I became pen pals with Yusha. Even thought while eating building closeness steadily will pay off somewhere. Yuna is great at hide and seek. Haydn excels at war games, and Deuce often performs puppet plays. They were all growing well without want. After reading the letter, Alon Palacio cheerfully thought they seemed well behaved. Here's this month's donation list. He was surprised by the list. Donations increased again. A small orphanage getting more support is odd. Even replied, that's not usual. Right, that's what the young master was looking for. There's a tip from the info network saying they found a lead. Even pointed to the line on the paper. Oh, that's lucky, Alon thought happily. If it's a lead, it's likely a tip about the third boss. Finally found him. Everything went smoothly, and it was a peaceful evening. In the night at the drug distribution point, 2 men holding a sack of opium joyfully said, the eldest Palacio is generous. The pay is high. Our organization has grown to hundreds. And it's only going to increase. Suddenly one man put the sword to his own throat. No, my hand won't obey me. Help me. Help me. 2 figures in black cloaks stepped forward. They were Yusha and Deuce. Today, I watched their puppet play, very entertaining, and the donor list to report has grown. Deuce asked Yusha curiously, but do these actions mean anything? Yusha smiled, what pity. Deuce replied calmly, no, they were crushing people to make drugs. It's just that I don't know if that will help with revenge. Breeze past them. Yusha cheerfully, of course. This lays the foundation for that person's return. When you arrive, that place mustn't be shabby. Yusha's smile was uncanny. I understand. Everything will follow that person's will. The 2 rose into the air. A beam of light shot from the drug trade point. Our blue moon is that person's sword. 2 years passed since I became pen pals with Yusha, and a lavish castle appeared. Even warily dragged his steps down the corridor, complaining, where is he, damn it. Even collapsed like a noodle. Groaning, I'm home. It turned out he was in the backyard. Alan, training, was startled. Even, with a blank look, even gave a thumbs up. Number 5 has been safely delivered to the orphanage. Alan covered his mouth in emotion as the surroundings began to sparkle. Meanwhile, the other 3 sins had all been rescued successfully. Alan squatted before Even, coaxing eat up and regain strength to Even ate gratefully. Mum, thank you, yes, thank you. Alan tossed a pastry for Even to catch, while thinking that number 3 was tough to find the sin of greed. But thanks to his game knowledge and squeezing Even to full capacity, everything fell into place. Seeing Even messily eating, Alan pityingly said, "You've worked hard roaming around, now rested." Even looked up and asked, "Is the orphanage mission finished?" Alan answered calmly, "Yes, it's finished." Even sighed in relief. "That's a huge relief." Even lay back, looked at him and asked, "But young master, aren't you happy?" Alan sat beside him and replied, "Of course I'm happy." Hugh even added, "Yet you show no emotion." Alan pointed at his impassive face with a slight smile and said, "Seriously, I'm smiling, aren't I?" Even was speechless. "Fine, let's say so." Alan lay down, one arm stretched up to the sky. Staring at the deep blue sky, he thought, "I didn't expect things to go this smoothly beyond hope." The bosses of psychedelia, all of them, whose tragic pasts made the 5 great sins, even though this is the past before they awakened into the great sins. Before those events, the chance to perfectly save them was very low. Instead, rescuing them after they're utterly broken is the greatest worry. Alan suddenly asked, "What about the orphanage?" Even reached over with the letter and answered, "Here's the letter, everything's fine as usual." Even began recounting the grim scene. At first the children were like a pile of broken dolls. Then the scene shifted, and everything brightened. Even said, "Things are much brighter now," and Alan, opening the letter, replied, "Is that so? Then we don't need to hire childcare teachers anymore." Thinking of gentle Yusha, Alan marveled she did so well. Perhaps she was set to favor the orphanage, and seems to hate being interfered with. Alan scratched his head. By that measure Yusha is a good child. Even, curious, edged closer. "Is there anything special?" The letter read, "Everyone is healthy. Some children are thriving. You needn't worry about Deuce anymore. Nor the children you recently sent. You needn't worry." Idyllic scene appeared, making Alan sigh. "Wow. Hearing the orphanage kids grew up well makes me happy. I didn't expect the 5 great sins to grow like this. Environment matters." Even suddenly moved behind Alan, placed a hand on his shoulder and oddly asked, "When will you meet the children? You've always said you will make time." "Many times so," Alan stammered. Well." Alan began to look away, evasively answering, "Actually," he thought, "I have no intention of meeting them in person." Though he knew closeness would bring many benefits. The process of becoming a great sin was truly horrific and brutal. The personalities of the children he recalled from the game had been awful since childhood. Thinking this made Alan feel nauseous. Since he intervened before they awakened, it might be somewhat better. But it's still terrifying. He hesitated, trying to cover it up. Maybe in 5 years." Even replied, "So that's it." Alan sighed. After all, in this damn dark fantasy world. He raised his hand to summon 2 streams of power, thinking he only needed to develop a bit more self-defense ability. Alan continued, musing that magic requires talent, and fortunately he had the traits. Her suddenly Even asked, "Have you heard of the Blue Moon?" Alan, puzzled. "Blue Moon? Never heard." Even hurried to explain, "It's a recent prominent group specializing in hunting criminal gangs." Alan's face cooled as he retracted the magic orb. Calmly, "A cleanup crew. They do good work." He thought an organization even he hadn't heard of would soon vanish. Even then put on a creepy expression and tona, "But they even go after nobility, so I assumed you knew." Even Alan ordered seriously, "From today sleep in the next room." Cut to night. By the dim oil lamp a voice suddenly said, "All right, hear the Blue Moon's weekly activity report." Yuchia glanced and asked, "How about the north?" Seal Rang giggled and report, "I've uprooted them all." The cat-like girl licked her hands and answered, "The head of the slave traders, Pride Sin Seal Rang." She flipped in the air excitedly. Identities weren't exposed. Then she praised Rhine. "Rhine's outfit is perfect. If they'd known my eye color they'd beg for mercy, but no one knows." Rhine slammed the book shut, looked up. Even the corpses were completely destroyed. Greed Sin Rhine. Raiden, with a nonchalant air on the steps, said, "The South is complete too." His tone was calm, as if recounting a story. "The illegal bio labs and those disgusting Avalon." Raiden suddenly looked up, smiling grotesquely. "They've been crushed beyond recognition." Purging Sin Raidon. Yucha's eyes glowed red as she beamed praise. "Well done." Everything unfolded exactly as his will. She looked at everyone, spread her arms and said, "We exist for the Great Moon. The secret cult venerates the Great Moon, the Blue Moon. But a problem has arisen." Yucha suddenly grew terrifying and demanded, "Under his decree everything must be perfect. How dare a problem occur?" Deuce hurriedly raised a scrap of paper to explain, "The Avalon head of the Palacio Count's family, doesn't he have an eldest son where he resides? While cleaning the South, I found a dangerous directive." "Know what happened? Who did this to her?" Yuchia asked with a frightening gaze. Then she denied it herself. "No." Everyone grew anxious and fearful. The paper read, "The Count will die soon, then will be silently poisoned and dealt with." Yusha crumpled the paper in her hand, her tone and expression terrifying. "Truly, that's correct." 2 years later at the Palacio funeral, Father Count Palacio has passed away. Looking at the man in the coffin, Alan thought silently, though the cause of death was reported as a heart attack. He sighed and guessed silently, but he abused drugs until death isn't that obvious. Leo beside him suddenly spoke the blue moon again. The others replied yes, they attacked unexpectedly last night. Leo asked, so were they wiped out this time too? Alan glanced at Leo's back and thought that side seems more concerned about the blue moon. And so the funeral, with no one mourning the Count's death, quietly ended in everyone's silence. Back at the castle, a voice suddenly rang out, young master, what do you plan to do now? Even watched Alan packing and scratched his head. Next year you'll all inherit. No, you will become head of the family. What's with all this luggage? Alan didn't explain, only urged, you pack too. Handing the suitcase to Even, Alan said calmly, let's go. Even startled, you intend to leave the domain? Even, full of question marks, packed while Alan called from outside, not abandoning it entirely, but going down. Even lifted 2 chests with one hand and another trunk with the other. Turned and asked down below, you mean Rodmil, right? The image of the 2 leaving was Alan's answer. Yes, I've planned to move to Rodmil, a small village located south of the Palacio domain. At the same time, upstairs a figure watched them go. Leo's eyes, venomous as a snake, looked down. Cutscene. A super delicious egg bread suddenly appeared. Alan expertly flipped the bread and egg. A happy scene of Alan cooking and even rushing back to help. All after just 3 days. Alan held his head. Ivy returned to the Count's manor. He thought pale and dejected. Another funeral for the eldest boy. Alan complained bitterly about returning to that place of death. It's already decayed. Why die so early? Looking at Leo lying motionless in the coffin, Alan thought silently. Killed by a stab through the heart. How? Thoughts of the killer drifted in his head. Who is it? Who killed Lee? Alan suddenly spoke up, startling the person beside him. Hey, about the cause of death. The servant turned pale and apologized. Sorry for meeting your gaze, sir. Another called from afar. Hurry over here. Alan was left speechless, suddenly gone off the rail. Suddenly Even called out to him, young master. Alan glanced and asked, Even, did you learn anything? Even moved closer and whispered, well, young master, about you. Even said something that stunned them both. Could the one behind this be who wiped Avalon out in a single night? Alan didn't answer but glanced at the trembling servants in the corner. Not long ago, the day Alan left Rodmil, inside the luxurious carriage a voice suddenly spoke up. But, young master, Even sitting opposite Alan asked, since we have to go anyway, wouldn't a city be better? Alan calmly replied, Alan's face filled with resistance. Or no, absolutely not. Rodmil is the final destination in my plan. The painful memories felt like a mirror cracking, saving the 5 great sins, preventing the world's destruction. A peaceful scene appeared to replace it all. Images of everyone playing together, cats basking in the sun, made him think Rodmil has nothing to do with the original plot. And there's even the Palacio villa there. Propping his chin with one hand and looking out, Alan told himself, live like a noble, an easy life. Lloyd Frontera, a life of indulgence, carefree. Alan said calmly, everything has its reason. Even pouted. I won't be fooled again whenever it's troublesome. You explain casually like that. Alan thought, sharp indeed. Seeing Even sulking with arms crossed, Alan sighed helplessly. Fine is fine. Why overthink and get a headache? A figure silently watched the carriage depart from above. Leo looked maliciously at the departing carriage, gripping the railing and scheming. Fine is fine. Why overthink and get a headache? His eyes swept the carriage like a venomous snake. From the start the man was negligible. After his father's death I intended to poison him, but... He recalled Alan bowing before him, and heard the man quietly went to the border, so there was no reason to strike him anymore. Leo glanced, thinking, Avalon has been unlucky lately. Is that why? Just that his grip on the railing tightened. Annoyed, Leo didn't turn but calmly ordered the man behind Alman, tail the carriage. Alman coldly asked back, so you want me to kill him? Right? Alman, Leo's henchman. Leo turned in surprise. A few flickers of worry appeared in his eyes. Someone who always follows orders like Alman. Seeing Alman still standing coldly, he was shocked. Why question me back today? Leo turned away and ordered, just follow my orders. Suddenly a sword thrust came, catching him off guard. Leo gripped his sword and trembled, saying to Alman, you dare betray me? Alman replied coldly, because I enjoy the game of war. Looking at the blade smeared with syrup, Alman added indifferently, it's been fun. Alman, Leo's henchman. Haydn, a member of the Blue Moon. Ivan's face appeared with Alman's words. I follow a creed taught by the red crescent moon. The blue moon is your sword. So we act under its direction. Alman's gaze grew icy. But if anyone dares harm the great moon, he suddenly stabbed hard. The blade slashed through. Leo only managed a scream while Alman coldly added, the blade can move on its own. Fresh syrup splattered across the floor. Seeing Leo terrified on the ground, Alman said calmly, that's why I waited for you to say that, though I didn't expect it to take 2 years. Leo forced a threat, my men will not spare you. Alman paid no mind because of a few words from you. Avalon will now be gone from the continent forever. Alman said with a dark face, what a pity. He vanished, leaving only this line, the great moon already gave you a chance. Cut to the next morning. Alon stretched and said, "Good morning, Rodmul really is paradise." He yawned sleepily, murmuring that today is peaceful. Get up whenever you want. Next is a scene of Alon and even enjoying breakfast. Eat whenever you like. Alon chewed loudly and thought to himself that since he's living a noble life, maybe he should sell toasted bread. Suddenly Ivan rushed in with a letter. "Young master, there's mail." Alon was surprised. He took it curiously. "What's this?" A piece of cheese suddenly fell. The letter stated that due to the tragic death of Leo Palatip, Alon Palacio is requested to return. Alan's eyes widened in disbelief and his mood plummeted. The Paradise trial ended after just 3 days. A scene of mourning covered the entire Palatip house. "I'm returning to the Palacio estate." Seeing the servants trembling in the distance, Alan wondered why they were reacting like that. Ivan whispered, "Young master, since when were you behind Avalon's eradication?" Alan froze. So now I'm in a simulation where crazy events keep happening." Alan sat dejectedly in a corner and called Ivan. "Hey." With a face like he'd lost his ration book he said, "Please explain how the hell I became the villain." Ivan scratched his head awkwardly and replied, "The only one who benefits is you. After we left the manor, Leo was killed, and you have a perfect alibi to become Hare." Alan heard it like a lightning strike and froze on the spot. Alan sat like a block of ice while Ivan babbled on. "Avalon is gone, so Leo's death is no longer troublesome, and that's that." Ivan, unsure where he got the uniform, laughed and said, "You ordered a master swordsman to become the shadow controlling the Count's family." Ilan gaped, very pleased. He thought, where did that outfit come from? Alan tiredly propped his head and wondered where to start rebutting. Surely no group could bury a figure of that scale in an instant. Then he turned to Ivan. "Oh right, you mentioned an organization that hunts other groups." Ivan replied, "You mean the Blue Moon?" Alan agreed, Could it be them?" Ivan replied nonchalantly that the guild reports say it's probably not the Blue Moon. Ivan thought further. The Blue Moon leaves no bodies but always leaves traces. But word is Avalon was felled by swords. The scene there was like hell. Alan asked, trembling, "So I'm the mastermind who has a master swordsman?" He bowed his head and thought, "True, the Blue Moon doesn't appear in the game. Weaklings before the plot starts can't be the culprit. So who is it after all?" Meanwhile, Yucha coldly asked the other two, "What about the traces?" Ryan replied calmly, "Nothing left behind." A rotating blade word, accompanied by voice of "Me too, me too." Seal Rang toyed with the blade in his hand and smiled. "Just corpses." The door opened and a voice called out, "I'm home." Deuce reported calmly of Alan's remaining personnel 468. At that moment a voice behind Dust suddenly rang out, as if the boss had ordered. Raiden rested his sword on his shoulder and smirked, "Kill them all and split each one in two." Yushia turned into a demon and praised with satisfaction, "Very good, perfect." A grim battlefield scene appeared. The giant Avalon that once manipulated Asteria was reduced to ashes in just 5 days. Raiden added that still, the cleanup hasn't gone smoothly. Yucha asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" Raising a classified file, Raiden reported calmly, "We've found more nobles linked to Avalon." Noble family appeared in the report. Notably, the Archducal house seems deeply involved. Yucha studied the file in a low voice. She then looked up with blazing eyes and said, "You know what I'm going to say, right?" The others fell silent at that. Raiden gave a deadly smile and answered, "Handle it quietly, right?" Hearing the agreeable reply, Yucha exhaled. Her mood returned to normal and she asked, "In the end, has the Information Guild settled things?" Ryan reported earlier with one briefing, "Yes, we consider this unrelated to the Blue Moon." Deuce, who had reviewed it, also reported that all guilds said it was a hell wrought by swordsmen. Ryan, expression unchanged, asked, "Continue monitoring their moves." Hearing the reports, Yucha ground her teeth. "Maintain secrecy. This must not reach that person's ears. I've said it before." "Understood." Deuce asked, puzzled, glancing away from the files. "But because that person's kin had targeted them first." Yucha cut him off, her voice darker. "This time it's not an order. We are the Swordad. How can a sword think for itself?" Then she pointed at the moon outside and warned seriously, "The Blue Moon only acts on orders. Remember, that person already knows everything." Finally, with everyone wary, Yushia emphasized, "Do not disappoint me." Deuce found Yusha's recent mood and actions puzzling, truly strange. Someone with overwhelming power like Yusha feeling insecure and anxious, just cause they've been discovered. After reviewing the documents, Deuce raised an eyebrow. "I get it now. It's all because of the Great Moon. Because of that person." Meanwhile, at the Palacio family house, Alan lay exhausted amid the piled documents, unable to bear it any longer. After the funeral ended, "I was swamped for a month." He was so tired he couldn't hold back tears. "I want to gallivant and loaf around. That's the noble life." Reading his notes, Alan still didn't understand. Despite suppressing all hatred, Leo's death was supposed to be 6 years later, and because other brothers' deaths diverged from the game's plot, the family duties fell entirely on me, the Hare. A cry from the servants bringing the books made Alan give a laugh more ugly than a cry. "Yes, young Baron." He sighed inwardly. "Why is everyone working so hard now? when they were lazy while I was a baron. The servants, seeing Alan's gloom, were frightened. Is he angry? We must work harder, I don't want to die. The exhausted man who silently labored without relying on servants thought puzzled that even the retainers must now work seriously. Because of rumors about his cruelty, he's here but not yet arrived. He sighed to heaven and earth, wishing someone would understand. By a roaring fire 2 skewers of meat were grilling. Even looked up at the fire in surprise. A young master, saying it again, it's truly astonishing. Watching the energy shards radiating around him, he wondered how he'd reached level 2 after only 2 years of self-study. Truly extraordinary. When did you develop this much? Even continued that normally it takes about 4 years of instruction to reach level 2. And magic can't be used without innate talent. Alan, chewing a piece of meat, replied indifferently that his talent is passable. But inwardly he sighed. Despite the chaos, he practiced diligently to protect himself. He continued training and calculating that this could only be done by finally controlling mana. Even with this magical tool, his eyes darkened. Yet what use is it? It's only half complete. Recalling his early bewildered days, he marveled that he'd gotten to use all the magic in this fantasy world. At first I was very eager. Back then Alan, inexperienced, smiled confidently. If the plan finishes there'll be no danger, so just slowly self-study. However, the truth he realized recently when self-defense became urgent was that his mana pool is crazily small. Alan no longer sneered but wept. Nothing goes smoothly. An innate mana pool is like an athlete's natural weight class at birth. My mana pool is, well, very small, so small it can't be covered up by training. After a while Alan ate and brooded. If it's truly impossible, there's still a way. Even cut across his thoughts. Oh right. The invitation to the ball finally arrived for the young master. Alan looked at the letter in puzzlement. A ball. On the appointed day they went to a ball, filled with loud, lively chatter. Alan sighed again, exhausted. The regular ball is held in the south of Asteria for noble socializing. Though tired, Alan had to rally his will. He's about to become a count, so use this chance to improve social ties. Ivan, with a pile of food, asked, puzzled at his expression, what are you doing? Socializing with the nobility is crucial for my peaceful future. But wherever Alan goes, people oddly scatter. As he drew near, he uttered one word, me. They immediately fled as if they'd seen a ghost. Even coughed to comfort him. Don't be sad. Alan's face didn't change. It's sad. No, of course not. And still wondering if it was hard, Alan waved him off. Even, I'll go and be back. He strode off decisively with a cold air. I know I'll be scorned for lacking pedigree. Alan's face chilled as he pondered, unlike our illustrious ancestors, Palacio now sees me as the Eastern saboteur. Picking up a glass from the table, he thought, I'm not here without a plan. I will use the social skills I've quietly trained to bind people to me. As he moved toward the woman, Alan swirled the wine and remarked, the flavor of this wine is truly unique. He stared at the glass in praise. This aroma seems singular. Then he smiled in a way he deemed appropriate and continued, I want to take a few bottles home to store if inwardly pleased. A gentle smile is mandatory in socializing. The woman who witnessed his expression and smile was terrified. She immediately ran off screaming, I will tell my father and we'll prepare it at once. Alan tried to stop her but couldn't. Alan mentally chanted, not like this. The nearby guests murmured that he was threatening to seize a limited edition specialty wine, a worse prodigal than his brothers. Even forced a reassuring smile and patted his shoulder while Alan kept hypnotizing himself into denial. She must be an unusually shy lady. Joyful noises rose again in the hall. The spoils had increased. Even excitedly listed a premium breeding Paulcian horse, Penia citrus tea, Valanda, crafted metal, Malentino specialty wine, a grand list. While even despaired, I've even tried to learn about wine. Palacio is a bastard more infamous than I thought. Rumor has it I eliminated those 2 rotten brothers. It seems I've become someone people avoid. Or watching the noisy crowd from afar, he wondered if the silence breaking made him feel even more distant, or if it was his imagination. Alan warily waved his hand. I'm going out for some air. Even, still absent-minded, replied, yes. Kalia held her wine glass and watched Alan leave. She seemed to be scheming. On the balcony, Alan stood taking in the wind to calm himself, still wondering where he went wrong. A voice cut in, excuse me, sir, may we speak for a moment? Alan turned quickly. Someone wants to speak to me. Who is it? He looked at the closed door and the empty space, puzzled. Then a voice called up from below. Me. Loria timidly introduced herself. I'm Loria, the 3rd daughter of Duke Alcia. Only then, hearing the name, Alan thought, Alcia, no wonder outwardly polite. Hello, miss. The Alcia family is one of the 3 major dark powers of psychedelia, the great northern saboteur. Alan inwardly chanted again, indeed, anyone daring to approach me can't be ordinary. After a moment of lament, he suddenly realized, why isn't she in my memories? It felt like he'd never seen her in the game. Loria, anxious and impatient, said, I'll be blunt. Facing that intimidating man, Loria forced herself to say her intention, please lend me your strength. At that she stammered in fear, I am about to. After a pause she resolved to reveal the reason. I'm about to be assassinated. Loria collapsed to the floor and looked up pleadingly. Please lend me your strength. I'm about to be assassinated. Alone Palacio pondered solemnly, his face unreadable. Loria pleaded urgently, despite being protected so far as a duke's mistress's daughter. She bowed her head, her voice tinged with fear when Duke Attila becomes endangered. My sisters will kill me, Loria's voice echoed in the silent night, making Alone Palacio think this was a doomed alliance. His gaze stayed fixed on Loria as he slowly realized why he had no memory of her. She's dead, so she doesn't appear in the game, Loria pleaded urgently, as if asking for the power Aaron once had. Before she finished, Alone Palacio cut in coldly. Then I refuse. Loria blurted in panic. I'm not asking for nothing. Alone Palacio spun and walked away. Loria frantically called after him. If you help me, the whole Altia family, he decisively interrupted. I'm leaving. Alone Palacio frowned inwardly. The situation is pitiful, but even if I wanted to help, I don't have the power people say I do. He glanced back at Loria, who stood with her head bowed. Under the night sky, her eyes were full of disappointment and sorrow. Alone Palacio, embarrassed, could only touch his neck and sigh. He turned back to her and said reassuringly, something good will happen. Alone Palacio descended the stairs but kept worrying, hoping she'll find a good ally. Nearby, a man in a black cloak said sternly that the Alchi family has reached the Great Moon. And perhaps I should inform the Red Moon that something good will happen to her. The cloaked woman below glanced down and replied softly, no, it'll be fine according to intel. She isn't linked to Avalon. She fixed her gaze on Loria hurrying below, and added that she's the only Alchia not targeted for purge by Raydan. Deuce cut in with cold eyes. Things have become easy. Since the other Altias will be dealt with, the woman behind replied quickly. Yes, we follow the Red Moon's orders. Deuce's tone turned stern, focus on preventing any news about Avalon from reaching him. The two of them then shifted their gaze toward Alone Palacio. He looked around gloomily and wondered if some protective barrier had been placed around him. When Kalia slowly approached and said, Good evening, sir. Hearing the greeting, Alone Palacio perked up. It's directed at me, right? Will I remain silent to the nobles this time? He turned slowly and hesitantly said hello. Kalia appeared in a dazzling red gown. Alone Palacio froze, thinking another villain. This face is clearly from the game. She smiled enigmatically at the stunned Alone Palacio, he thought. No wonder the one who dared speak first can't be an ordinary noble. Alone Palacio stepped closer, bowed and offered his hand politely. Hello, Miss Genonia, Kalia, surprised, asked. You know me? Alone Palacio kept a serious expression. Of course. You were famous in many ways. A solemn kingdom appeared, the third generation of the Dark Asteria. Alchia in the north is represented by the blue rose and the snowflower. Palacio in the east is represented by a purple eye with a moon-shaped pupil, and the western wreckers, Genonia, a kingdom wrapped in blazing red. The eldest daughter of the Genonia baronial house. Kalia smiled with potent authority, like a venomous serpent, and asked, Am I very famous? If Palacio is a gang, Genonia is a smarter corporate-style rogue. Kalia is like a powerful boss with dozens of hulking men at her command. Thinking this, Alone Palacio could only tremble inwardly. I need connections to secure a peaceful, noble life. Though nearly ruined, I mustn't be involved for the sake of a comfortable life. Alone Palacio reassured himself and bowed. She's so beautiful, Kalia, eyes amused, replied, Thanks for the compliment. Her gaze turned sly as she asked, Can we talk a bit more? Alone Palacio's eyes went cold. He cleverly declined. I'd like to, but many people are watching internally. He begged, Please let me go. Kalia smiled triumphantly as if she'd achieved her goal indeed, just as rumored. She slowly turned and said softly to Alone Palacio, I look forward to seeing you again. He watched Kalia's figure recede. How strange, he wondered. The cloaked woman, having observed everything, announced gravely that information about Avalon was being well blocked. Of Deuce added that matters of concern had increased. Just then outside the window a man in black was watching. The cloaked woman continued that he was tailing that person, and seemed to be preparing an assassination. With no special orders, we follow and deal with it, she said. Then the two black, cloaked figures ran from the feast. Under a blue sky with streaks of cloud a voice asked, Young master, are you sure this time? Even and Alone Palacio stood before a gorge. Even scratched his head in doubt. Is this really the gorge we were looking for? He sounded incredulous and a bit afraid. It's daytime yet it's strangely dark inside. Alone Palacio, eyes rimmed dark, clenched his hands and thought, Finally found it, my real goal. The shield effect is identical, clearly so. They walked straight into the gorge where many stones with strange seals appeared. Even kept complaining that a third failure would be depressing. Alone Palacio hurried to reassure him. This time is real. He thought he'd found it easily in the game. A maze map flashed in his mind. Actually, the reason for coming to this distant land under the guise of a ball was the southern maze, the Whispering Maze. Winds howled around the gorge. Alone Palacio recalled that after solving the puzzles in 8 rooms total, he smiled with satisfaction. The reward could be a fine artifact. I already memorized the strategy. I'll prove the truth of level grinding. They stood before a large stone carved with special characters. Alone Paltio marveled to see the maze entrance in reality, though he'd grown bored of it in the game. It still felt different. Even interrupted his thoughts. It's the same inside the gorge, as if someone crafted it with care. How do you know a place like this? Alone Paltio answered solemnly, I've been here often. Surprised even exclaimed, you come here often? He snapped back to himself, naturally stunned. Alone Paltio feigned a sly face and replied, I'm joking, there's a way, let's go in. Even shivered and begged, please don't joke with that look. At that moment visions of hordes of beasts, flying and slaughtering flashed through Ivan's mind. He worried aloud that if they solved the puzzles wrong they'd suffer mercilessly. Terrible sounds kept echoing from within. Ivan glanced toward Alone Paltio, who was staring intently. He admired Alone Paltio's cold expression and thought, how does the young master do that? How can his complexion remain unchanged in this situation? Thousands of questions flooded Ivan's mind. Despite 4 years together, he still didn't understand the young master. His tasks seemed unrelated: dismantle evil organizations, repay debts, rescue orphans, help slaves, convey meaningless words. Ivan couldn't understand Alone Paltio's smug look. How would he know all this from just staying home? He turned and pointed at the giant fist above. I answered correctly. But it only opens once that's completed. The door slowly opened. Ivan kept brooding that following the young master was suspicious, since everything had become profitable. While Alone Paltio muttered beside him, it's opening, Ivan grew more uneasy and asked what exactly the young master intended to do this time. Alone Paltio's face darkened. Inwardly he suffered. Finally the doors opened. Felt like vomiting. I foresaw it, but didn't expect such cruelty. I must turn away, he forced himself, breaking out in a cold sweat. The room inside was filled with gold and treasures. Ivan couldn't help exclaiming they'd finally reached the end. A hand studded with rings lay on a pedestal. Alone Paltio said sternly, just take the black ring and leave. Ivan, clutching gold bars, asked doubtfully if that was really his goal. It looked the most useless. Alone Paltio slipped the black ring onto his thumb, and replied, it's a bit large. Bringing anything else would only cause trouble. Put it down. He watched the black ring glint on his hand, and glowed inwardly. Finally a binding. Alone Paltio reassured Ivan not to worry, returning would be safe. Ivan answered, yes. Alone Paltio followed happily, thrilled that the strategy made it easy. Then Ivan hesitated. My lord. Rows of stone soldier statues armed with weapons emerged from the smoke. Ivan's voice trembled as he asked if the young master had planned this. The rocks in the gorge seemed to be golems. Without delay Ivan drew his sword to defend, frowning and thinking, these unknown enemies are bad. We must find a way to get the young master out. Suddenly Alone Paltio stepped forward. To Ivan's surprise, firm in voice said, this time let me handle it. Alone Paltio stood among the giant golems while Ivan's voice echoed, my lord, whatever you do, finding an escape route should be the priority. The golems lunged to attack. Ivan panicked and shouted, wait, level 2 magic won't suffice. Alone Paltio, unafraid, slowly raised his hand and said, enforce the limit. Immediately a beam of light from the black ring spread and enveloped the golems, freezing them in place. Alone Paltio felt as if in another mystical dimension when a voice echoed, go shard inheriting Niakla's great will. State 2 limits you can execute. Alone Paltio looked up in surprise, thinking that in the game it had been a choice window. Then the voice spoke. A gigantic, bizarre face appeared in the void. The maze, cleaning limit reward. As the name implies, it's an absorbing artifact that imposes limits on the user and grants rewards. Alone Paltio trembled slightly at the immense power and murmured that the voice forced one to accept this place as reality. He slowly said, 1. The artifact's deep eyes flared. Speak. Alone Paltio clasped his hands as if activating the limit and said solemnly, absolutely restrict Babylon's beast seal usage in magic. The artifact rasped, what do you seek from it? Alone Paltio answered, the power to slightly distort the world's laws. The artifact's vast mouth, as if containing the cosmos, opened and said, I permit it. Taking the chance, Alone Paltio shouted again. One more thing, the artifact commanded sternly. Speak. Alone Paltio interlaced his fingers the other way and continued, limit the Babylonic syntaxes used in magic. The artifact was slightly surprised. What do you intend to do with it? At that moment Alone Paltio shifted his skill form, cupped his hands and shouted, what you desire is the same. The artifact fell silent as if pondering something. Alone Paltio noticed everything froze and panicked inwardly. Did I do something wrong? I followed the skill icon form as a precaution. Here you must choose the sigil and set the limit. Then magical attack power can reach its maximum. Having replayed it so much I know the sigils and phrases used in the game. Alone Paltio sweated and told himself this must succeed. Suddenly the artifact's huge mouth spoke. I accept, O human who remembers the mysteries and sigils of the great god that were forgotten. I express gratitude for continuing this will. Alone Paltio was surprised. Continuing the will, what does that mean? At that moment the ring on his hand seemed drawn into the air and vanished. Alone Paltio realized the ring was being absorbed. Looks like the limit succeeded. The artifact faded, but its voice echoed, "Inheritor of the will, I will always watch you." Back in reality, the golems were still charging. Even shouted, "My lord," with level 2 magic. The golems rushed forward fiercely with massive weapons in hand. Even ran forward, reaching out and yelling, "It's still not enough." Alone Paltio stood solemnly, his gaze as if he'd seen this scene before. A hand with streaks of electricity was forming a technique. Celio asked. The thunder sphere should blaze. But even gathering all my mana, it's still too weak. Alone Paltio was shaping a sphere of light in his hands. Surrounded by brilliant beams, he told himself that however he trained, this was his maximum limit, hence the limit and its cost. The golems drew nearer, the radiant sphere between his hands. Time to test them. Then Alone Paltio thrust his hand to the sky, eyes fixed on the glowing orb. Leaving the mystical space, he wondered dazedly if the ring was still on his thumb. Strange. As time resumed, he was slightly stunned. Ivan's voice still echoed, "It's still not enough." A terrifying thought arose. Time to test it. A magic sphere was summoned. Alan coldly watched the small glowing orb in his hand. Images of him with flowing water appeared. Recoil bolts of lightning struck down in succession. Alan raised his hand. Before him a blinding source of energy. Each bolt Alan summoned coalesced into a gigantic ball of blue light. Alan extended his hand and fired the energy sphere straight ahead. Linear diffraction. Even was terrified by the sight, mouth agape and eyes wide. The crowd ahead was distorted and transformed by the blue light. The lightning bolts began to dissipate. The stone figures followed suit and started to crumble. A few bolts still lingered. When it was over, Ivan and Alan stood on the cliff looking down at the ruined scene below. Seeing Alan still calm as if nothing had happened, Ivan blurted out, "Damn, unbelievable." The two continued walking. Ivan asked, "Have you been hiding your true power all along?" Alan replied, "Impossible." Ivan, puzzled, said, "What the in 15 years as a mercenary I've never seen anything like that. You said that was only a rank 2 spell." Alan affirmed coldly, leaving Ivan speechless as he gave him a glance. "That's right." Though expressionless outwardly, Alan felt turmoil inside. "I didn't foresee this. It wasn't that strong in the game, if I remember correctly." In Psychedelia's turn-based system, spells can be enhanced each turn by sigils or incantations, a turn-based combat system. The system notified Alan attack power increased by 10%. Alan thought to himself, this was a chain lightning spell using 4 sigils and chants, enhanced over 5 turns. Recalling the earlier sight, he thought the accumulated bolts were amplified together, forming a configuration suited to a wide area lightning grand spell. In exchange for the limit-forcing sigils and chants per spell, we gain something else. O forgotten mortal who still remembers the sigils and mysteries of the great god. I thank you for inheriting his will. Perhaps that's why the spell was amplified many times. Alan scratched his head helplessly, thinking inwardly that still, this rank 2 magic was overly potent, exceeding expectations to the point even he was surprised, while even behind him silently thought, finally free. Even sat leaning against a rock, exhausted, complaining in a wary voice that this was more tiring than fighting. While Alan paid no mind, even kept pointing at the mountain range, grumbling who had come up with such a horrible place. Alan's gaze sharpened as he considered that the Whispering Maze had another name. It spread through the community via shared map settings and guides. What's Palon Maze? People kept saying Palon, Palon. What is it? The Whispering Maze, a mid-level training area in the game. According to the director, the maze had an owner. You could grind endlessly if you ignored rewards. And at some point it began to be called Palon's Maze. Alan muttered as he turned his head. Then at some point it began to be called Palon's Maze. It even, dazed, asked again, "Sorry, what did you say?" Alan helped the exhausted Even up, saying as he hoisted him, "Let's head east. After 3 weeks of hard training, there's something I want to do when we return." Even was shocked and protested. "What? You've been more diligent than I thought," as he helped Even. Alan thought choosing sigils of the same school as the spell boosts power, and the right incantation enhances attributes. That's how the system works. But unlike the game where visuals don't change and only attack stats rise, attack power increased by 10%. This time each sigil actually altered the spell. Alan rubbed his chin, thinking that each incantation caused a clear change. It just now. Even if it was only a spell technique, could my mana control be refined enough to sense those shifts? Reaching the 2 horses, Alan thought that when his mana recovers he must test it again anyway. Everything turned out fine in the end. Under the pale moon, a lone figure silently watched the two's movements. Ryan's gaze grew colder in the darkness. A perfect parabolic arc was drawn across the night. A pair of legs suddenly appeared. Ryan stood before the door inscribed with strange characters and murmured, "Anyway, everything turned out fine." The script of the Alanar Empire. She reached up and removed her hood. For a friend about to be left alone, the sword Saint Palon stood firm. Ryan lightly touched the stone and laughed mockingly. She thought to herself that he had repelled the black invaders and defeated Alakalaka, yet swallowed the heart of his own man, the Radiant Emperor, Great Palon. "I know everything, for I was born with a great mission. in the ancient library. Indeed, Palin created a ta. I learned the Empress Blotia differed from records, so I suspected something extraordinary. Imagine even the great moon once called Palin a friend worthy of reverence. Moreover, the chant he whispered doesn't exist in any record of the ancient library. Who after all was that man? Rhine quietly left the cliff alone, with the shy look of a maiden in love. She murmured that everything Hong Gaiet said was true, and she was ashamed for blindly following orders. Suddenly Rhine's expression turned cold again, her voice icy. He's arrived, has he? Looking up at the man standing above, she asked, did you get any information? Deuce, expressionless, replied coldly, no, the man in black is dead. Recalling the horrific scene, he added that the man's neck had suddenly been twisted twice midair. Rhine pulled her cloak back on and said coldly, I will report this for proper handling. The two figures silently flew off into the still night. Cut to the estate of Count Zenonia. Kalia sipped her tea lightly and coldly said, so it's not just a rumor. Recalling Alan's gaze, she thought to herself that his eyes were truly cold and indifferent, like a bottomless abyss. Famous huh? Leaning back on the sofa, Kalia said calmly, indeed, Count Zenonia is powerful and renowned. As she spoke, her eyes turned malicious. It's odd that someone who rarely socializes like you is seen as famous. Kalia gracefully moved closer to the man and asked, isn't that strange, father? Looking at her father, the Count, she said slyly, because father is the Count. Smiling wickedly, Kalia flicked her fingers. In the Count's eyes now sat a cruel, arrogant Kalia. Watching her father move like a puppet under her control, Kalia smiled in satisfaction. She whispered cunningly that no one would suspect she was truly running the family, while her father pretended to be a fool. Recalling Alan's words and noting many eyes are watching, she brought a fan to her mouth to hide her cruel smile. Even the spy I planted seems to have been discovered. Kalia had just stepped out when someone urgently called after her. Miss Kalia. She replied irritably. What's the matter? The footman shouted. Miss, please return to your room at once. A corpse slammed into Kalia's view. The footman behind her wiped his brow and said, it seems the seal wasn't activated, meaning he hasn't revealed the secret. Kalia crossed her arms and said irritably, he deliberately placed it in my room, did he? She burst into laughter and said, how did they find this out? Like a queen serpent. Kalia's words were full of poison. From the moment we met you hit my greatest weakness, didn't you? Cut to the carriage. Alan groggily woke while even slept with his tongue out. The Archduke's domain, a place of lavish splendor, lay sinking into darkness. Loria sat in her room and smiled bitterly. Indeed, not an ordinary person. She clenched her dress in anger. A underworld benefactor with cold eyes like her father's, someone you must never oppose. Faced with all these events, she realized he was her last lifeline. But would he accept such a losing bargain? Stripped of all assets and power by cowardly siblings, the eldest son Tamalian, eldest daughter Marianne, younger daughter Perrine, younger son Kig, because I have nothing left. Standing outside the opulent palace, she felt smaller, pitying herself for surviving on her father's pity and love. What now? Lost in thought, suddenly a footman burst in shouting, Miss Loria, the youngest, has returned. Miss Perrine and young Master Kig are dead. At the news, Loria froze and collapsed. What? People willing to stab their own family? Really, it's absurd. Suddenly remembering two closer relatives, she sprang up. What about Timalian and Marianne? Before the footman could answer, a piercing scream came from outside. Both had driven swords through each other's chests, as if intending before death that the other should perish. Timalian, Marianne. Her ears rang, and she could no longer hear the footman's panic around her. What is happening? No one noticed Radin's figure on the roof, fleeing with a malicious grin. Job done. The panic made her run in terror as well. At last, amid the fear, Dinas Macallian's voice rang out, it will turn out well. She thought of the one hiding and waiting, hiding claws to seize the position, the true puppeteer behind the ducal family. Holding her trembling self, she whispered weakly, you mean that I, like him, after one night became the sole heir of the ducal house? No answer came and she collapsed, not knowing what unreasonable pact she'd signed, with no turning back. Loria rose and went inside. What if I betray him? There have been too many precedents already. Her eyes grew more determined after this incident. I have no choice but to continue on the path I've chosen. 2 months later, at the lavish palace of Alon Palacio, the butler respectfully brought a gift box. I came on the Duke of Alcia's orders. He wondered. The Duke of Alcia. When he opened it, even marveled at the contents. This Cernant's wine. He examined the bottle, and estimated each one was worth thousands of gold. Hard to believe he was seeing it in person. A short letter was attached. He read it aloud, respectfully, to Loria Alcia, not the Duke but Loria, the youngest. Prepared. Why send this to me when I'm on the run and struggling to survive? Alon Palacio, suspicious of the expensive gift, asked to be sure truly for me. The butler bowed. Yes, the Duke prepared it personally and ordered me to deliver it by hand. He was startled. The Duke personally? Wait, so that means? He realized the sender might be Loria, the youngest. Has she become Duke of Alcia? She set her pen down and stretched as if she'd sat for hours. 2 months passed so quickly. After our father's funeral, he died of illness. I held the succession ceremony and became Duke. Looking at the room I now own. She thought of the past. At first I couldn't even enter this office. Loria briefly grew sad remembering the tragic deaths of her siblings. Though their deaths were sudden, I avoided all suspicion, with an alibi of being at the ball at the time. Even my secret organization was eliminated by my siblings, so when I returned to the mansion I had truly lost all power. Thinking this made her head swim, and she trembled unconsciously. By the time I knew it was too late, how could he exploit this situation? Recalling Alon Palacio's cool, mysterious demeanor, Loria felt curious. Outwardly he refused coldly, but then handled everything perfectly. Just how many steps ahead had he planned? I didn't even announce the funeral for fear of bothering anyone. Walking alone down the dark corridor, she smiled softly. Clearly he needed Alchia for some plan, so he came to me. Even though I'd unified all organizations under Alchia, they still couldn't match the power he hid, meaning he wanted something different from me. He carries a unique, unmistakable charisma and exterior presence that made her sigh. Palacio, a boss of the underworld, who built power through business. If it's something he lacks, but I have. She devised a plan, manipulate the political scene from the shadows. The reputation of Alcha, yes. Staring at her father's portrait, Loria urged herself. For now I must focus on what needs doing. My patron will contact me soon. Just thinking of it brought a smile. Hopefully the thank you gift pleases him. Seeing Alon Palacio not refuse Loria's gesture, the butler also took his leave. Then I will take my leave. Alone he remained lost in thought. Loria was once threatened with murder, and now she's a duke. Even peered curiously at her knave look. What else is going on? He sensed something strange was happening. A few months later, in winter, 5 years before the original story began, snow began to fall and cover the place. She had barely turned when she heard Even call, "Oh, young master." He hurried to speak. "Young master, oh no, you recount now?" He turned and laughed. "Though it's not the succession ceremony yet, the new year has arrived, so you may use the title." Alon Palacio's face looked briefly gloomy. His grand life plan didn't include becoming a Count Cecil's perfect rules, conquering Rodamal, not fighting for succession, traveling in style. Then he brightened, thinking more cheerfully, "This is familiar, so I can enjoy the full perks of nobility. Wurabel is even better than I thought." Even pulled a letter from his coat and handed it to him. "It's from Yuchia." He took it, pushed open the door and asked about the situation. "By the way, any news on the assassins yet?" Even replied quickly, "Nothing clear yet. The Intelligence Council is investigating thoroughly. We'll wait and see." They both sat at the table. He tapped the table and asked, "What's your purpose? Surely it's not revenge." Hearing the question about himself, he thought first, the changes from the game are the butterfly effect I caused. Just precautions against the unexpected. Even stroked his chin, teasing his pensive look. "You looked very Count, like just now." Alon Palacio breathed out, "Fine, let's say so. I wonder what this one contains." He picked up the letter and read, "How are you? We all well as always. Everyone is absorbed in their hobbies. In particular, Deuce's puppet play has reached a truly high level. Xiaolang is obsessed with gaming with friends. Ryan still quietly reads but often creates things, and Raydan has taken to landscape decorating." He smiled, knowing life there was moving positively. The orphanage's monthly letters warmed him, though he'd never seen them. Watching the children grow from his support made him smile like a father. Thinking of the children, he asked casually, "By the way, the 5 elders know, how old are those kids now?" Even wondered, "Why do you ask?" But he answered based on his knowledge, "It's almost time for them to enter society. Some left the orphanage earlier. Most you ordered to be found are around that age." The letter ends with sincere thanks. "Thank you for raising us." Sincerely, the 5 elders. He thought of a plan. "Right. We should gradually let them out into the world." Even was briefly surprised by his remark. "Really? Weren't you gathering those weak children deliberately?" Alon Palacio shrugged with some pity, recalling the children's situation. "No reason. They've grown up. It's time to think of their future." He pondered, "Having been cared for so they don't turn to crime, they'll manage on their own." He added, "They all seem healthy now, so that's that." In each boss fight the narration hints at their abilities. A girl named Yudia has talents in faith. Deuce has talent in swordsmanship. Ryan has talent in research. Xiaoling has talent in combat. And Raydan has talent in artifacts. Alon Palacio lifted the precious wine box and let the letters fall beneath it. Preparing a perfect arrangement placed them correctly, and they'd be capable of securing positions. A flawless plan. Thinking of their smiling faces, he decided to proceed. Might as well give each a gift. They all like it. I'd promised to give them something someday. After a long bout of writing, Even woke from a nap, sprang up, stretched and announced, "All done." Hearing this, Even quickly took the task. "Well then, I'm off." He waved goodbye but wondered, if all goes well later, will I get even a small share of the profits? Silently hopeful, "Children, take this letter and step out into the wider world. Yuxia received the letter. Her face was so serious it alarmed others. As she announced the orders had arrived this time, they were sent to each person individually. The whole group agreed, faces bright with a mix of joy and nervousness. Upon receiving the letters, the four opened them and read attentively before speaking. The orders have arrived. And this time he sent them to each of us separately. Seal Rang jumped for joy when she got hers. Deuce McCallion grew pensive. Over here Ryan awkwardly accepted hers, while Radon stared blankly, examining his for a while. Yucha was the most composed. But before anything else, she said they should reread the previous letters, because the orders are highly coded. Seal Rang naively asked if they could really read them. Only she ever could too. Yucha guessed that since he sent orders to each person, he must have decided everyone could view them. The letter read, "How have you been lately? You seem to have many capable friends. If you need anything, tell me." They crowded around to read. The girl scratched her head and wondered if this was an order. Ryan was unimpressed. It sounded like ordinary conversation. Seeing the commotion, Yuchia explained and handed her letter around. Right. He disguised the order as casual talk from the start. Okay, look. Holding the letter, she pointed out that apparently mundane lines were actually signals. This is the first directive after the greeting. Yuchia, how are you? I have free time. My second child sat on Mira's as a chair today. Funny, right? I'll write sometimes. Reply if it's okay. And the child mentioned is the one I'm sending this time. He designated targets to eliminate, assigned missions, and asked for reports afterward. The closing lines read, thanks for replying. I'm glad. Tell me what happens at the orphanage on the first of each month. I entrust that place to you. Together you'll all be fine. Seeing everyone focused, she became more earnest. That's when he entrusted the blue moon to May. As you see, he personally chose all of you. After explaining, Deuce McCallion nodded. I understand. Prevent leaks. I recall my first order. She shrugged and pointed like this. You must fully understand the orders and carry them out correctly. Responding to his concern, everyone listened intently. Shouldn't we meet him directly or use a magic communique? Radan agreed. Makes sense. If you fear leaks, why use letters? Yuxia coldly stared at them, her tone sterner. Do not forget that all we must do is follow the orders. The murderous aura she exuded made Deuce McCallion shudder. A chilling conviction. I will not forget. Seal Rang laughed excitedly. Then let's read the orders. In the dark room only a dim, flickering light glowed. All five concentrated on decoding the orders in the letters, silent enough to hear heartbeats. Next, Deuce McCallion's letter read that he was ordered to go to Caliburn, the nation of knights. The girl pouted. Colonies, but I don't like deserts. Radan's destination was another city. You must go to Raxas, the entertainment city. Rhine's was likewise mysterious, to Larthania, the labyrinth city. Yuxia stood and smiled mysteriously. The holy nation Rosario. Everything you must do is written in the letter, right? He glanced with puzzlement. For some reason he told me to become a knight. Seal Rang answered innocently. He also said not to worry, because he'll continue to provide support. Ryan revealed what others might forget. He also indicated the locations of the gifts. Radons is set by hand. You'll know what they are when you arrive. Seeing the team so decisive, Yuchia still reminded them of the prohibition. Okay, but remember this. Unless he says otherwise, do not mention the name, Blue Moon. They set off with smiles. Seal Rang clung to Ryan while Yuxia stayed last to hand over matters in the palace before they all left. 3 months later, the table was covered with messy stacks of books and papers. Alon Palacio, eyes ringed with fatigue, flipped through each pager. As expected, there was nothing on changes in magic or symbols. I will have to research this myself. Even was in the study too, arranging shelves. At the call he looked up and, reminding himself, asked about gathering intel on the killer. Prepared. He answered quickly. The Information Council still hasn't found anything. He thought. I see. Then he propped his chin as if calculating. It seems the butterfly effect has spiraled out of control since I saved the 5 great sinners. Inevitably, even Loria, who was supposed to die in the story, became Duke Alchia, expanding power at a terrifying speed in the underworld. Seeing his guess was likely correct, he suggested to stop investigating the assassin. Even was surprised. Huh, really? Alon Palacio trembled, thinking of the further consequences if Even continued. The situation of knowing less is better in this world setup. Almost nothing can escape the Information Council's network. His eyes darkened and his limbs went limp. If I dig into what I shouldn't know, what comes back might be death. And then all precautions mean nothing. In his thoughts he watched people slashing each other with swords in pain and loss. Ultimately, such secret organizations won't touch me unless I meddle. There's no reason for them to attack if I don't approach them first. Snapping out of his reverie, he told Even that continuing the investigation was pointless. Even complied at once. All right, I'll tell them to stop. Almost forgot, he added. Oh yes, another bit of news. Deus was apparently just appointed a knight in Caliburn. I don't care much really. Good for him. 3 months later, Ivan, holding skewers of appetizing grilled meat, called to him. Count, truly talented Deus seems to have formed an entire order of knights. They sat eating and talking. He sprang up. What? So he's at least at an expert level. Alon Palacio sorted through the ranks in his mind. Swordsman, sword mage, sword saint. How long has he been appointed? Even explained earnestly that people say the world will have a fifth sword saint in less than 10 years. Hearing sword saint, he couldn't help but be curious. You mean the one called Caliburn's sword, right? He said between bites. Truly talented. I'm proud of him. Caliburn must be in a fever over this. 6 months later, at the magnificent palace set amid beautiful natural scenery. A year had passed since the 5 great sinners left the orphanage, and as I settled into work at the Count's residence, only Alon Palacio was in the room when Ivan entered and announced, "Count, I just heard very new news." He paused with a pen in hand to listen. It seems Deuce has become Caliburn's sword. At the last phrase he couldn't focus, and looked up, becoming the 5th sword saint. His voice, as if disbelieving his ears, asked vaguely, "But only sword mages can become sword saints, right?" It's the convergence of 3 people with exceptional talent. Of psychedelic sword mage is a superhuman who transcends sword kai, and opens a unique ability called derivation. Alon Palacio wondered, "Are you saying Deuce is a sword mage now?" He nodded and emphasized more precisely, "He's about to become one. He hasn't produced his own derivation yet, but the nation has already granted him the title of Master Knight. Not only did he win a duel against the 4th sword," he propped his chin and listened as Ivan added that Caliburn had also lost a Master Knight to the northern barbarian tribes. He nodded. "Right. They've been at war for over a decade." Ivan scratched his head evasively. "Sensing and controlling mana takes 15 years, and derivation requires at least several decades. Decades ago a brutal war between humans and beasts broke out. The first sword, Reinhardt, became the youngest Master Knight ever at 32. Volume 3 main arc. Accepted as a temporary teammate. Removed after the mission. Reinhardt had wielded a sword since age 5. Believe in the youngest swordmaster to exist." Saying that made him shiver indeed. Reinhardt was unbelievably strong. Even with talent it would still take over 20 years. Yet a child ignorant of swords became a Master Knight. Alon Palacio had his own thoughts. Wait. If he's only waiting for derivation, hasn't he already surpassed Reinhardt to become a sword mage? Maybe I can tail him sooner than I thought. Staring at the letter on the table, he hesitated between choices, yes or no. Even waved his hand bluntly. "No way." He pulled out the charming letter, leaving the other stunned. I only receive letters from Yucha, even though she went to the Holy Nation. The letters she regularly sent still reported news about the great sinners she grew up with. Few, they seemed to keep in touch. A feeling of gratitude rose in him, though they'd never seen his face. They should at least thank him for the gift. He suddenly felt a bit guilty, catching himself in vanity. Alon Palacio slapped his own face to sober up. "Back to basics. I'm already grateful that they didn't destroy the kingdom after awakening as the 5 great sinners." Looking out the window flooded with radiant light, he smiled. "As long as they live well, I'm happy." Caliburn capital, Kirtham Central District, the mansion of a high-ranking noble. The largest manor where the noble solar knights reside. Of the rapid footsteps of knights echoed throughout the space. Up here Dinas McCallion stood proudly looking down. He was a man with purple hair and an extremely handsome face. Deuce McCallion, captain of the Solar Knights, the youngest Master Knight. Through the transparent window those below had seen him and waved. A little girl called out, "Silly," to him. He returned her greeting with a gentle look. Suddenly he coughed a few times, uneasy. It's been exactly a year, but thinking back he still felt ashamed. That was the day Deuce McCallion lost the most important thing in his life. "When I lost everything to those black things, and only hatred remained, and uncontrollable rage. He had to sit alone in a filthy, cold corner. The great moon saved my life. Was not a sufficient reason for me to swear loyalty. She, with a sunny smile, had saved me. But because she promised I could take revenge with my own hands, I followed the orders under the blue moon, worked under it, endured countless dangerous missions and training, caring little for my own safety. In the end it passed, and he grew up more mature. Over several years I completed missions that laid the groundwork for the fight against those black ones. And before long I received my first personal order. That was the day he held the letter and read it with Radon's group. This really came out of nowhere. What is this?" The letter highlighted a small inn south of Caliburn. "Ivy left a gift in the bell by the door. Go check it." Deuce McCallion sneered. The gift didn't excite me. Curiosity drove him to open that room's door. What could be inside? As soon as he pushed the door and stepped in, he was stunned by the sudden letter. A woman he once knew appeared before him. The gift the great moon sent was. Deuce McCallion ran forward and hugged his little sister tightly. "The family I thought was lost forever." She hugged him and sobbed silently from waiting so long, more precious than life itself. He dropped to his knees and embraced the sister he hadn't seen in ages. A warm Sina, the sister I thought dead, was alive. Tears still clinging to his cheeks, he held her shoulder and asked, "Shilly, after we parted, what happened to you?" Wiping the tears from her eyes, they sat together at the table to talk. Holding a cup of hot tea, the girl, downcast and sad, recounted how she was separated from him and dragged away by them. Shili was imprisoned in a mysterious villa, shrouded in darkness that kept her in constant fear. She waited for her turn in the dark for a very, very long time, and just as her turn came and she was about to be killed, she escaped thanks to a shaft of light, and survived. Repeated brawls took place. The girl covered her eyes and cowered in a corner behind Ivan's shadow. Years later, when about to be sold to slavers, a mercenary named Ivan saved her. Shili got up, opened a drawer, and thereafter received valuable medicine and sponsorship continuously. In her hand was Alan Palacio's nota. You'll be safe under the Palacio name. Don't worry about your brother, Alan Palacio. Her cheeks flushed at the mention of him. He's someone I'm truly grateful to. Deuce McCallion stared in astonishment. He protected her. Even staked his name to shield her. How would he know about the Great Moon? He clasped his arm as if to tie things together. Never told him about myself or my family, and Yuchia only realized I was attacked by the Black Flock. So how? Yusha's words suddenly echoed in his head. He knows everything. He opened his eyes wide, awakened. All my questions fit together like puzzle pieces and then vanished. Her face appeared in every fragment of memory. I didn't understand Yuchia's worry. A sword isn't something that decides for itself, right? But the fool was me. Her voice was still in his ear. Good things will happen in hindsight. She knew everything and gave a hint to the child who would have to survive alone. Seeing him still standing there dazed, the girl called his name. Hey. Deuce McCallion ruffled Shili's hair to reassure himself. The sword probably acted on its own. The hand dangling in midair trembled, but he generously ignored it. Me, the one consumed by hatred and loathing of the Black Flock. Just seeing his family and sister warmed his heart. No matter what life had been like, having my family alive was an incomparable gift. Yusha's cold face appeared. You will soon understand why she followed him. Deuce McCallion doubted himself. I'm not merely a fanatic or a blind believer come to Caliban and become a knight. In the end he decided I must repay him. But first my task is to reach Caliban's peak, become a master knight, and form an elite guard unit of the finest swordsmen. A rider entered and saluted respectfully. Commander, it's time. A cavalry unit had been mustered, their stance proud and full of vigor. Faces set with determination. This expedition will be a stepping stone for the eclipse. With the sword in hand, Deuce McCallion resolved. I will endure every hardship, awaiting the day I can offer a repayment that satisfies him and express my gratitude. Under the waning moon his sword, bearing silhouette, was more compelling than ever. Prove yourself beneath the moonlight. Along the snow-covered road a column of riders stretched in formation. The Lunar Knights set out to campaign against the barbarians. Alan Palacio leaned back, hands behind his head against the wall, enjoying the warm sun. Peaceful. Perhaps the kids have finally grown up. The wind blew the pages of old books into disorder. Not even settled from resting, he had to sit up and gather them. Oh no, they've all blown away. Holding his pen he watched solemnly. Let's see. The dense lines on the thick paper made his head spin. Why did I scrawl everything and make it hard for myself? I should be neater. After returning from the maze I'll focus on studying phrases. He sat up straight and began studying. Okay, synthesis of my research is done. Analyze phrase clusters. Each cluster alters magic differently. Refraction, amplifying imperfections, expanding range. The next chapter covers refraction, that amplifies the imperfections of a complete spell, broadening its area of effect. The blinding lights radiating here are their effects: repelling, crushing form and trajectory of attacks, transmuting matter, changing state, repelling and crushing the shape of launched objects to displace them. The lightning tearing the sky was blue light. Like parallel arcs of Manhwa, the blue light enhanced magic cast in parallel like lightning. They are recorded in the book as linear diffraction, penetration, critical strike, piercing. Linear diffraction grants penetrative ability. In other words, a critical hit. There are cautions marked in the book. Important phrase rules. If a spell fails, don't use unsuitable clusters. Don't repeat the same cluster. Use at most 4 clusters. With my mana core I can cast only once per day, so it took quite a while to discover this much. Recalling his long days in the library, Alan Palacio pondered. Phrase clusters and the beasts of Babylonia are forgotten concepts in the original tale, so there's no information. Notes lacked explanation. Ultimately, through self-study I found defensive magic rather intriguing. Theory was sufficient, so he rose to practice. Alright, let's see the results. After 2 months of experiments, sparks of electromagnetic energy began to appear from his hand as he clenched it. Then he placed a finger on the fist and the power multiplied. By removing the focal point of the magic, assembling sphere, it produced an electrical shock from imbalance. Alan Palacio somewhat disparaged this magic. A weak, useless, fixed kind. A sphere formed of radiant streaks of lightning manifested. He concentrated, compressing all his inner energy. Alan Palacio used imperative phrases to hasten the process by uttering command sentences. Collapse, gradually achieving the intended effect. His hand opened, encompassing everything, blooming briefly. Waves of surging energy rose up across the sky, as if to cover the whole place in lightning. Seeing that, he sighed in relief. Order of incantation matters too. But remembering just now when he used collapse of first it failed. A shout rose from behind to stop him. No, that can't be. Two unfamiliar people froze him in place. Coming closer he recognized them. Kalia cried out in alarm. Prime. He was startled. What? Why is Kalia here? Byanchal, trembling as he accompanied her, said, the singular prime magic is something only a seventh circle mage can perform. Alon Palacio felt a chill. Prime. A question formed in his head. Could it be me? In the reception room of the Palacio household, Kalia and Byanchal sat silently. Kalia thought, impatience growing. There are two clear reasons they came. He holds a card that could deliver a critical blow to Zenonia, confirming Count Palacio's intent is essential. And he needs to sense by magic the power that swallowed Palacio, and the capabilities of the organization protecting him. Then she noticed Byanchal beside her, trembling with fear. What she found was that the proud mage was shaking in terror. Byanchal's current state sharply contrasted with the man Kalia knew. Byanchal, a fifth-rank mage expelled from the tower for inhuman experiments, was a man who could wipe out a battalion, and who had always been arrogant even toward me. Despite my years of support, Byanchal shook more and grew paler, yet I felt a deep horror radiating from him. I had never seen him like this. Kalia wondered vaguely, could that magic truly have been a prime? A voice broke the silence. Of Kalia, startled and turned. Well, Alon opened the door and stepped in. He asked coldly, why have you come to the Count's estate? Kalia bowed respectfully and apologized. I'm sorry for the sudden visit and any rudeness. She explained, I went around looking for you, my lord. Alon magnanimously replied, he won't hold it against you, Miss Zenonia. He didn't waste words and went straight to the point. But one thing to be clear, the thing I used is not a prime. Alon's tone was utterly calm. If I had to rank my magic, it would be around tier 2. He cast a cold glance at the two. Surely you've sensed it, mage. But that kind of magic has no practical function, unfortunately. It's useless for defense or offense, in other words. Unexpectedly, Alon directly threatened Kalia, making her and Byanchal turn pale. Best keep quiet about what you saw. Byanchal shook violently and stammered flatteringly, yes, perhaps I was mistaken. While Kalia found the scene hard to believe, Byanchal used formal speech. Alon didn't press them further. Good. Then rest assured the misunderstanding is cleared. Now why did you really come? Kalia spoke softly. We happened to be nearby for other matters and stopped by to greet you, so there's nothing special. Alon seemed indifferent. Unfortunately, I have work to do and can't spend much time talking. Kalia was considerate and rose to leave. Understand. Thank you for granting me this brief audience. I take my leave. Alon called after her, if what you seek is someone to talk to. He spoke plainly, but the hint of mockery. Better visit Duke Alchi. I have a feeling you two would get along. Kalia, though very displeased, restrained her anger. She forced a smile and bowed before leaving. Hearing you, I will likely visit the Duke. Kalia's carriage departed. Alon and even stood talking. If it's Zenonia, why would a declining Western house seek us out? I can't think of a reason. Alon cursed inwardly. What a nuisance. He thought, if rumors spread that I used a prime, power-hungry people will swarm me. This place is dark fantasy enough as it is. Alon walked on, thinking, you know what I mean. There's no reason Zenonia should approach Alchia, their rival in the underworld. Alon felt exhausted anyway. Don't come to me alone again. Meanwhile, in the carriage, Kalia discussed Count Palacio's magic with Byanchal. Could it really be a prime? Byanchal still trembled, stammering, no. Then your earlier reaction was. Byanchal shook uncontrollably. A prime is a magic that draws its own rules onto the substrate of absolute, immutable principles, a privilege of only the supreme archmages. He activated his scrying art. But the Count was different, as you asked. I opened the observational eye and saw his magic. The substrate was being torn. He was bending the absolute principles themselves. Byanchal recounted to Kalia, fixing the lightning at a single point, distorting and collapsing the laws, yet still activating a spell of preposterous feat beyond reason. His face went deathly pale with the image of the vanishing stone, and the burning eyes was unforgettable. And what lay behind it? There was no mistaking it, the trace of a forgotten elder god. Suddenly Byanchal clutched his head in pain. I must stop thinking. Going further is dangerous. He cried out helplessly. Once I was praised for pursuing ancient knowledge, studying what men call forgotten era magic, so heed my warning. Do not confront Count Palacio, and do not make him your enemy. Kalia let out a bitter laugh. Then there's no point probing his intentions. She weighed the best course of action. Perhaps truly visiting Duke Alchi is the best. Kalia pictured herself as a pawn for the Count's amusement. Her expression soared. I've become his pawn. 5 months later, 2 years since the children were sent away, at the Duke's manor. Even had just opened the door when he heard Alon call, hey, Yeben. Even approached Alon, asked about news of the children, any updates, preferably about them. Even hesitated, not about the children, but Zenonia District and the Alchia Duchy have allied. Alon was struck dumb. What? Two pillars of the underworld allying. Even confirmed. It seems reasonable on the surface. Via an underworld pact, but it's been verified. Alon despaired. I raised those little rascals, and now they reallied in the shadows. Will Asteria fall? He recalled what he said to Kalia that day. Could she have taken my words literally? If what you seek is someone to talk to, perhaps you should visit Duke Alchia. Alon tried to hypnotize himself, waving his hand. Come on, it's probably just a temporary alliance given Kalia's cold pride. No way. That said, he still pulled out a letter to write, though he figured he should prepare just in case. Alon sat writing in a complicated mood. Kalia, if I seem brusque or distant, I apologize. It hardly sounds like an excuse, does it? When finished, Alon sent Ivan off to deliver it. Yeben, the rest is up to you, he said, waving his hand. I will send a message to Miss Zenonia through the mercenary guild, and continue searching for the children. After Ivan left, Alon read the returned letters, overwhelmed with longing. What are Raiden and Sealing doing now? Even in Yusha Blodia's letter, the two vanished after arriving. He worried intensely for Seal Rang's safety. Sealing should be fine, not dead, right? Alon regretted deeply. If they followed the letter and found the offering, they could become a warrior's war seal, even be promoted to Baba Yaga, the divine hand of the Golden Mane clan. When worn, it raises crit chance by 20. Had she not been guilty of pride, she'd be a valorous werewolf, not a fallen sinner. That's what the item description stated. He still hoped Seal Rang would survive. He'd even told her about hidden treasure as travel funds given her talent. She should make it. After all, that land is where the strong seize the world. In the desert nation colony. A quiet space, only the wind sending dust and sand swirling outside. Inside a stone cavern, Seal Rang returned exhausted. The girl stretched in relief. She'd finally passed the trial. At some point the Golden Mane clan's essence had settled into her hand. Oh Moon Spear God, thank you for this gift. Seal Rang admired the essence with a delighted smile. I thought the Golden Mane's essence was just a trinket. She suddenly recalled tales told long ago. What I heard as a child wasn't mere folklore or nursery tales. Seal Rang remembered gathering with family and the clan chief saying, yes, we were werewolves, descendants of the Golden Mane, rulers of all Beaskin. She'd been told many stories about that essence. The Golden Mane's essence was a sacred heirloom for centuries, granting power and divine authority. Now that I have it, Seal Rang carefully placed the essence on a stone slab, facing the inner world's challenges. She channeled strength and the essence instantly appeared in her hand, carrying immense power. Because it was all real, seeing the shimmering essence in her hand, Seal Rang couldn't hide her joy. But she always remembered the silhouette of her old benefactor, the clearest memory. The day I was dying like an experiment, the savior with the moon god's bloodline rescued me, and gave me the power to avenge the black dragon who killed my parents. Seal Rang burned with resolve. I must repay that debt. Since receiving the essence, her aura had changed. Clearly the offering's true purpose wasn't to make me a mere arena fighter. Seal Rang's eyes shone with determination. What I must do is become the strongest living warrior, then gather the scattered Golden Mane clan to restore its glory. And with that power, Seal Rang dashed out of the cave, raising the essence to block the lightning. I will slay the black dragon. Silence returned to the space. Seal Rang looked up at the bright moon. It's all for my benefactor. The girl smiled, glanced back at the cave she'd lived in, then steeled herself. Let's begin. Under the moonlight, Seal Rang walked proudly, carrying the hopes of an entire clan, the Golden Mane, rulers of the Beaskin, destined to be reborn under the moon's glow after 500 years. Even spoke up. That reminds me. He explained that the Information Guild had obtained news of the children. I meant to tell you at the training yard but forgot. Alon Palacio interjected. Okay, tell me. Even said Seal Rang was performing exceptionally well in the settlement, earning the nickname, Golden Lightning. Alon Palacio scratched his cheek, pondering. Golden Lightning, sounds familiar anyway. Hearing that it's okay puts me at ease. Hearing this, Even nodded. That's right, in that land, with strength you can become anything. Suddenly Alon Palacio asked about Radon. I haven't heard from him since he said he was apprenticing at Raxus. Even replied softly, there's some info, but they were still verifying it. Alon pondered. Is that so? By the way, Ivan. Alon Palacio glowered and questioned, aren't you very busy? Even flinched. Why are you looking at me like that? I finished all the tasks you gave. Alon reminded him, you must prepare. The trip to the Magic Tower takes at least a month, which made even jump up. What, the Magic Tower? I've never heard of this. Seeing that reaction, Alon Palacio thought, oh, I didn't say. Even sighed helplessly, I'm used to this. He found it hard to believe. A month. The Blue Magic Tower is only a week away. Alon Palacio said, we'll go to the Azure Magic Tower. That's near the Labyrinth City, so it's still far. After that, Even left quickly. I'll prepare immediately. Alon Palacio flopped into a chair and exhaled. Another month in a carriage, just thinking about it is tiring. But oh well, the item that can support my precious little mana hole is there. He propped his chin, bored Labyrinth City. So many memories back in the game. I spent ages grinding there. The Central City's Labyrinth is the signature leveling map in Psychedelia. Players can get high-quality items by leveling and pushing deeper. But though countless people entered, no one ever reached the end. I once cheated down to floor 150. The devs are crazy. There are even deeper floors. Why make them when no one can reach them? Just to watch us suffer. Who knows what items lie on floor 150? Just like in the game, relics and sacred items are found continuously. Which is why the official magical appraisal profession became so hot. Being an appraiser means a wealthy life. He thought. Rin said she's about to take the appraisal exam. Given her talent, she'll surely pass. Alon Palacio sighed to himself. Maybe I gave her less than the others. The item only helps appraise equipment. He decided he'd send more support items if the initial gift wasn't enough. Scene shifts to Labyrinth City. Larthania belongs to no ruler. It's the domain of explorers and mercenaries. Passing countless shops in the southern quarter, you will find a secret appraisal shop called Murder. The shop is quietly renowned for its special services, its clients mostly nobles and top-tier explorers. At that moment a notice rang out. The appraisal is complete, sir. Larthania turned in surprise. Oh, among them is Lord Larthania. Ryan explained. This device produces fire from mana. He stepped forward. Thanks as always. Let's see. A lamp appeared, a relic that can imprint a skill, showing what is inscribed. Ryan introduced it. With a little mana it can keep a flame burning for at least an hour. Larthania was very pleased. Performance greatly improved. Excellent. The two continued their chat. Thanks a lot, you. Re-welcome. A while later Ryan sighed and began to remove his mask. Her expression was a little wary. Suddenly Ryan turned and saw something. She picked it up. This thing can also imprint. The reason this hidden shop is famous is its imprinting power. Then Ryan left. It was a gift from the Great Moon. Elsewhere, a ring hung suspended in the air. Ryan smiled happily. At first he told me to become an appraiser, and I didn't understand why. His true identity was Palin's friend from the age of the forgotten outer gods. I understood everything so far aimed at destroying the Black Ones, but to go to Labyrinth City Larthania and become an appraiser, I couldn't link that order to the other objective. Even after leaving, she kept wondering how becoming an appraiser related to killing the Black Wolves. But the moment I saw that gift I understood. Ryan returned to her home. Eye of the Stalker quickly identifies items below a mana threshold to aid appraisal. A stone carved with a bound eye, unlike anything I knew. Ryan approached and used her power to free it. The library had no records on it. The outer stone slowly cracked. At last a beautiful object shone forth, and once the seal was broken the imprinting ability activated. Ryan told herself that to stand against the Black Wolves she must awaken this item. It is both a power and a method of offering. 248 out of 500. Light from the eye shone onto what she held. That imprint gradually appeared on it. Ryan smiled with satisfaction. I have 52 offerings left to fully awaken it, and in return the artifact stats will rise. It will absorb something from the offering and the eye will change. She pondered. It only reacts to high-grade artifacts. If the wrong offering is used, all accumulated progress will vanish. Accurately appraising every artifact and choosing the right high-grade piece for the seal is crucial. Ryan grinned smugly. That's something only I can do, for I was born with the eternal library. She nursed a dream, all to kill the Black Wolf, all according to the Great Moon's will. Time passed. 3 weeks later at the Blue Magic Tower a voice announced the Tower Master is currently absent. The Deputy Tower Master of the Blue Magic Tower, a 7-ring mage Phenia Crazon, frowned and ordered, "State your business," then left. She urged, "I'm busy, speak quickly." Alon Palacio thought, she's a familiar face from the main story. Currently she's only deputy, because the story hasn't started in the game. She was a once-in-a-century genius, reached the 8th ring at 20 and became Tower Master. The Magic Tower is not only powerful but also monopolizes production of several essentials, giving it status on par with nobility. He reflected that despite her deputy rank, someone who'd surpassed human limits should have very high status, then introduced himself. "I am Count Palacio." Alon Palacio explained as said, "I'm here to discuss the time gate." Phenia Crazon, busy, still replied, "Ah, right, bring the documents too." "So, what's the matter?" He bluntly stated, "I can erase the time gate." This made her arm suddenly freeze. A time gate is a rift connecting to hidden subspaces. Appearing where magic use is frequented, it causes anomalies and serious damage. Phenia Crazon examined it with magic and scoffed, "With such mediocre talent, what do you intend to do?" Then she waved her hand. "Hold on, never mind." Alon Palacio was slightly stunned. "This isn't what I expected. I need your answer." Seeing his stubbornness, Phenia Crazon grew annoyed. "You plan to erase the time gate and take the treasures?" "Yes, of course you do." She shouted angrily. "Right, sure. Do you know how many people come in here every day saying the exact same thing?" But Alon Palacio looked helpless. "I'm telling the truth. Take me to the time gate and I will show you. I'm innocent." Why won't she believe me? My God, she really is. Phenia Crazon cut him off before he could finish. "Look, I know you need something big to turn public opinion, since people are starting to suspect the only reason you became a count was luck when your brothers died. She unleashed power to drive him away. But that doesn't mean you can come here and cause trouble. Alon Palacio Frozio, the rumors spread that far. Must be because I kept to myself. She seems work-obsessed but oddly well-informed about the outside world. He watched her intently. Alon Palacio's face darkened with fear, terrifying no lie. She dragged me back when I was getting annoyed. Even beside him reassured, it's just her manus. I bet if we acted rashly we'd be snapped in half. Still he didn't give up. I'm desperate. If I can't close the time gate, I'll hand all my assets to the magic tower. Fenia Crazon snapped. Stop babbling nonsense. I see right through you. Alon Palacio's expression turned serious. If you want, I will swear an oath and spend the time. It's not a bad trade-off. That sounded reasonable to Fenia Crazon, and she agreed to listen. A moment later she still grumbled. The time gate is in here as promised. All your assets become mine if you fail. Alon Palacio confidently replied, that won't happen. Fenia Crazon judged inwardly. Perfect timing. I've been wondering whether you were the mastermind behind the county or just a lucky fool. She smiled wickedly. After hearing you, I'm leaning toward the latter. Fenia Crazon silently assessed his every action despite the grim atmosphere. He only has a small mana hole and slightly above average energy sensing. Talent at the edge of the second ring. What can you do with that? Pathetic. The truth is the gate doesn't need closing. In 3 months, it will vanish after releasing its mana. Research ends there. And no wizard can seal such a time gate. However, the time gate at the Blue Tower has caused trouble for over 2 years. Alon Palacio and Fenia Crazon had by then been shifted somewhere. She grew impatient. If you can't do anything, just leave the room. Suddenly Fenia Crazon exclaimed in disbelief. You were going to use your hands instead of a staff as a medium. Even the ancient magical tomes list that as a primitive method, like a fairy tale. Seeing Alon Palacio say nothing, she continued to complain. Heavens, please, stop imitating that. And the moment he uttered an incantation, the space shifted. Fenia Crazon's face darkened with terror. I can't move. No, everything has stopped. She tried to lift her eyes to look. Alon Palacio stood before a giant eye. Syrup red it was. The next second the eye widened and stared at Fenia Crazon, terrifying her. The space warped and a piercing sound rang out. Fenia Crazon's face went pale. Sweat ran down her face. At her body couldn't move. No, everything had stopped. A line of text appeared. The clairvoyance was unconsciously activated. Before her floated 2 magic circles. Fenia Crazon tried to widen her eyes and look up. Before Fenia Crazon was a huge red eye staring at her. A series of mysterious matrix rings appeared. Fenia Crazon suddenly understood something unpredictable had seen through everything. So that's it. This must not be touched. She was surrounded by interlocking, repeating runes and gave a soft cry of pain. Like a holy grail that contains poison, it was absolute destruction. The crimson eye looked down at Fenia Crazon. From the void a hand of the same color reached toward her. The hand closed with 2 fingers together, and moved to hover before Fenia Crazon's brow, pouring an idea that made her grow hazy. She saw Alon Palacio's silhouette faintly appear behind that giant hand, a kind of absolute power. Fenia Crazon widened her eyes, her face drained pale at that command. I understand it now. The red eye slowly began to close. Fenia Crazon stared blankly at the space before her. The pitch-black space likewise faded away. Fenia Crazon returned to the spot where Alon Palacio had been standing. Alon Palacio turned to her. The temporal gate has closed, and Fenia Crazon gave a small start. Alon Palacio waved the black ring on his hand. Thinking it was easy for him, just use the item and a special method, and then said, I will take the relics this gate has expelled. He glanced at Fenia Crazon, frowning and calculating, doubting something, as since he'd need to do it a few more times he used as a seemingly trivial spell, would it deceive her? Fenia Crazon showed obvious panic, her hand still at her chin. Yes, I won't say anything, I promise. Alon Palacio astutely noticed the odd expression. Was the bluff failing? He suddenly stepped closer to Fenia Crazon. Thanks for that, but it's not necessary. Fenia Crazon instinctively stepped back and firmly assured him, yes, I will keep silent. I absolutely won't utter a word. Fenia Crazon flustered. I may look like this, but I'm very discreet, truly. Alon Palacio looked at her in bewilderment. What on earth is this act? A moment later Alon Palacio went to Even and whispered, Even, let's go home. A hurried voice came from behind. Wait, please hold on a moment. Alon Palacio slowly turned around. Fenia Crazon awkwardly produced a case containing 5 vials and said, these are mana recovery potions I made myself, please accept them. Alon Palacio carefully examined the vial in his hand. Homemade mana recovery potions, and of the highest grade. Fenia Crazon asked in a trembling voice, are they to your liking? Alon Palacio was still staring at the vial in disbelief. I've heard 2 of these are worth a mansion. Checking the price nearly made my jaw drop. He was very surprised by Fenia Crazon's action, just helping Shimon, and she was thanked like this. Fenia Crazin awkwardly scratched her head, face flushed. Well, per the Count's request, I will keep this secret, certainly. Her eyes spun as she snapped her fingers. Right. A magical contract. We should form a magical contract. Alon Palacio was helpless. Really? A contract over something so small? Then he spoke up. Crew, wait, he had a vague sense that something was wrong, that there might be a misunderstanding. Fenia Crazin cast a spell. A large magic circle appeared overhead, from its center shooting out countless chains. They descended, half binding Fenia Crazin and the other half binding Alon Palacio. Still flustered, she waved her hand. See, I keep my promises. Alon Palacio had to turn away, resigned there was no chance to clear up the misunderstanding. And so I obtained the 5 potions and the relic I desired, along with a contract for reasons unknown. The noble carriage slowly left the tower, even looked at the ring on Alon Palacio's hand, and wondered quietly, is that the relic from Shimon? It was hard to obtain, yet it looks clumsier than I expected. Does it work well? Alon Palacio adjusted the ring. But anyway, this is something I had to have. He stared at it, the mark of the unclean. Luckily it was secured. With the gem set in this rotating ring, it can absorb and store mana from the air for use. A row of glittering crystal fragments adorned the ring. Alon Palacio thought to himself that it worked well, though capacity wasn't large. It was more than enough for his mana flow. Suddenly he sank into gloom, arms crossed, leaning against the curtain, someone whose mana was even less than that of a support item. But Alon Palacio immediately contradicted himself. No, the purpose is to study magic and protect myself, not to fight. Thinking that, he nodded repeatedly. That was enough. Even witnessing his behavior suddenly couldn't understand it. Alon Palacio rolled his eyes, and only when reminded did he wonder what Penny had actually misunderstood. A doubt arose in him that sudden politeness was odd. He recalled Fenia Crazin seeing him into the carriage, repeatedly bowing and saying, "Welcome back, my lord." Alon Palacio hesitated. "I'll follow the request, but I'm only a level 2 mage." Fenia Crazin gave a thumbs up. "No problem. Oh, I knew it, you really are a level 2 mage." Alon Palacio felt a little unsettled. Was it really that obvious? Back in the present, Alon Palacio propped his chin on the windowsill, reacting just like Kalia had before. A memory resurfaced, this time the scene Kalia and Bianchul had witnessed when he was a child. He still vividly remembered their faces of utter shock, exactly like Fenia Crazina's earlier expression. An anxious face forcing a crooked smile. Alon Palacio felt briefly annoyed. It was unpleasant. He reassured himself that they probably wouldn't meet again anyway, so let it be. Outside the carriage the sky was clear. A cool breeze scattered the leaves. He remarked deadly, "What a beautiful day." Even agreed, "Yes, very peaceful." At the Alchia Duke's residence, an elegant manor in black and white. Luria stared down at her teacup, her gloomy face belying her greeting. "Long time no see, please make yourself at home, Miss Genonia." Kalia gave a proper smile. "Of course, Alchia hasn't changed it. It's good to see you again." Luria replied politely, "Between us there's no need to mind rank or power, it's much more relaxed." Kalia praised Alon Palacio. "The Count's vision astonishes me again." She recalled Alon Palacio's cold expression, and his proposal seeking out the Duke of Alchia was a clever idea. Kalia's gaze fixed ahead, and the remark's deeper meaning quickly dawned on her. Her memories surged when they spoke. Kalia and Luria had been alone in an empty courtyard. She continued thinking, realizing both were under Palacio's influence. Luria widened her eyes in horror, and Kalia showed a similar shocked expression, frowning in disbelief. In Kalia's mind appeared the emblem of a golden cup and Alon Palacio's silhouette. Whatever the reason, by the Count's order an alliance had been formed. Next came the emblems of a red serpent and a green mountain under an absolute unquestionable power. Struggles for dominance became meaningless. Back in the present, Luria asked, "The meeting isn't until next month, so what wind brought her here?" Kalia placed a letter on the table. "The Count sent a letter saying he visited." Luria suspiciously took the letter. What kind of visit warrants a personal note? She read carefully regarding the noble houses, so Genonia and Alchia could forge a closer relationship. "Miss Genoa, I wish you well. About your recent visit, some nobles have complained to me, thus I am out of favor with many nobles. Please forgive me." Kalia waved her hand. It seemed like a routine apologetic letter. Luria was sharp-eyed, but surely the letter hid some command. Kalia understood too. "Yes, I think we should discuss this matter more thoroughly." Together they scrutinized every word of the letter. Out of favor with many nobles. Viscount Kenia sided with the nobles. Marquis Malatino was a royal faction key figure. Baron Villanda backed the royals, and Duke Paldian led the noble faction, the nobles he spoke with at the ball. After discussing, Luria concluded, in short, since both the noble and royal factions displease him, they exchanged awkward looks as they grasped the implication. So does he want them all killed? Luria sighed. "We should draw conclusions based on common sense." Kalia replied, "I agree. Suddenly Loria brightened as if she'd thought of something, right? She proposed another hypothesis. Alon Palacio appeared terrifyingly in her mind. He wants to overthrow the existing nobility and establish a new regime. Kalia understood. Really? Loria confirmed firmly that it was so. Loria leaned her head back tiredly, thinking to herself that this was why he needed Alcia's reputation, and wanted her made duchess. She suspected that if the Western overlord joined as well it would be decisive. Kalia forced a smile. It seems that's true. They proposed, then let's discuss the plan. Meanwhile at the Blue Magic Tower, Celium Micardo asked in surprise, Count Palacio, has he posted a poem? Fenia Crazin collapsed onto the table. Wary yes, Tower Master. Celium, curious, said tell me everything. Fenia Crazin exhaled softly and slowly looked up, and so the pieces kept appearing on their own. Chaos then snapped together. Alon Palacio suddenly gasped, his face gone pale. Even hesitantly asked if he was all right. Alon Palacio coughed, probably from the sweet potato. It just choked him. Alon Palacio accepted water from Ivan. Despite that, it tasted good. He held the water pouch, closed his eyes tightly, only wanting to get home as soon as possible. A thought flickered through his mind. It's also time for Yusha's letter to arrive, right? At the Blue Magic Tower, Celium Micardo exclaimed, Oh Penia, my disciple, I'm back. He looked around, but couldn't sense the time gate anymore. Did something happen? Fenia Crazin, haggard and gloomy, looked at him. You're back, Tower Master. Ivy completed the task you assigned. That expression made the Tower Master flinch. Penia. Celium Micardo suspected something serious had occurred. She wasn't angry at him as usual. He asked, what's wrong? Celium Micardo stroked his beard and thought. Penia became Deputy Tower Master very early thanks to blessed talent. Her arrogance and recklessness reached the sky. He pictured Fenia Crazin flipping her hair proudly, recalling times when mages left in resentment, causing yet another new mage to cry. This was the 77th time. Magic circles appeared as Celium's thoughts continued. Nonetheless, he never intended to change her character, because when it comes to magic she's extremely earnest. Once she reaches the 7th circle she'll realize how small her achievements are and naturally become humble. He concluded that this situation was truly strange. Celium scratched his head and smiled wryly, meaning his northern mission was long. In his absence there was too much to handle. Fenia Crazin sighed and looked up at him. After some conversation, Fenia Crazin spoke, so the Count closed the space gate. Celium Micardo folded his arms and questioned her. But she couldn't reveal the cause, because she'd sworn an oath. She sadly bowed her head. There's nothing more I can detail. That's all I can say. Celium Micardo smiled inwardly and patted Fenia Crazin's head consolingly. What made Penia humble was an inexplicable kind of magic, or rather primal magic. He saw Fenia Crazin obediently let him pat her head. She was so frightened she didn't even dare push his hand away. Celium Micardo raised an eyebrow. Count Palacio of the Kingdom Mysteria. Interesting, very interesting. At the arena the sound of impacts rang out amid swirling dust. 1 month after returning from the Blue Magic Tower, Alon Palacio exhaled after receiving the mark of corruption. I began seriously studying trigger phrases, since now I can use more spells per day. He solemnly took pen and paper to note the important rules for using commands. Magic breaks if conditions aren't met. Don't use incompatible items. Don't repeat the same thing. Use at most 4 items. Similar phrases can stack effects. It seems a command must be properly preconfigured. I think. Then he praised himself. Good, so I've learned a new rule for using triggers. Alon Palacio clicked his tongue and turned to look at Even approaching. Maybe it also depends on position and arrangement. But I'm not sure. Even praised him. Your magic grows stronger every time I see it. The Count replied indifferently. Really? Even added that it didn't look like level 2 magic before, but now clearly is. Alon Palacio guessed the rest, on a different level than a few months ago. They stood before a huge chasm formed by magical power. Alon Palacio spoke softly, keeping the next words to himself. Gravity. Level 2 magic. Even at full power it's not enough to crush to death. He put his hands on his hips. I think I'm getting stronger. Maybe it's not an illusion. Even next to him marveled. Your magic is truly fascinating, Count. A 3-day clay sculpting process appeared, showing daily progress. If there's a reason for such a sharp power increase, it's not due to proficiency or trigger phrases. Proficiency only raises accuracy and realization, while triggers act like keywords that change properties. Next was an image of Alon Palacio pointing at a chandelier and flipping a switch, the light of knowledge. Alon Palacio dressed like a professor, pointing to a chart of command research. I've spent months studying gravity command sets, and lately I nearly always alternate the same set. I finally discovered power only increases as I refine the optimal arrangement. He scratched his head. No, it must be an illusion. Otherwise it wouldn't make sense. There's no reason magical firepower would spike like that. Maybe I'm just in better form lately. Even replied, handing over a letter. Oh, I'm here to deliver Yucha's letter. It just arrived. Alon Palacio's cheeks reddened. Oh, thanks Ivan. I'll go read it in my room later. Even followed him. He glanced back while walking and stared at the letter. Yes, I've already used up my 3 spells for the day. He opened his notebook and slipped the letter between pages. The reason my magic suddenly grew, could it be the reward of a curse? A curse is an Eastern ritual where the practitioner sacrifices themselves to place a curse on others or themselves. When cursed, the subject loses something but gains a corresponding reward. Alon Palacio immediately objected that there are no Eastern people around him, so it couldn't be that. He folded his hands behind his back and pondered whether it might be faith instead. But then he realized the reality, account of a small kingdom ignored by the underworld. No, that sounded implausible. He sighed, his shoulders drooping. Oh well, sometimes just forget it and move on. Nothing bad will come of this, right? A tower peak adorned with intricate symbols, the holy nation Rosario, capital Ryanal, the pure white city where people worship the moon goddess and peace, Sharonia. At the Eastern prayer hall, a man approached a woman praying at the foot of a statue. The man spoke, "Greetings, sister." Yusha bowed and returned the greeting. "And greetings, Sir Knight Lok. Have you been well lately?" Lok privately judged that she was just a lower-ranking nun compared to a holy knight, not even wearing a holy emblem sash. He bowed deeply in salute. "But I must still show respect." Lok said, "Yes. This time we rescued 8 children and 25 lives from a small village in the East-West region. All thanks to the sister." Yuchia bowed slightly, eyes closed. "No, it wasn't me, it was you who truly did those heavenly deeds." She added, "And it was you who taught me, a foolish one." Lok looked at her solemnly. "I will always remember this gratitude. For 20 years I lived in despair because I couldn't even sense divine power. I nearly gave up." A memory of Lok appeared, the sword dropping to the ground with a jarring clatter. He slumped down, breathing hard and repeatedly. Suddenly a voice beside him made Lok start and whirl around. "If there's something you desire so much," the speaker suggested, "try placing your trust in the moon." Under the crescent moonlight, Yuchia smiled at him. Lok puzzled. The moon. A smile deepened at the corner of Yusha's eye. "You will understand when you truly do it." Lok frowned, thinking to himself that he was desperate enough to try anything. Images of Lok's scarred face appeared as he drove his sword into the ground. The blade emitted a dazzling golden light. "I prayed to the moon for days," as she said, "and miraculously I learned to use divine power." But then he froze, facing the truth. "I was very happy. But I fell into a moment of temptation and placed my faith in the moon, not the goddess Sharonia. I'm afraid I've stepped onto the path of heresy." Memories of training with other knights surged back. However, all power borrowed from deities is the same. Next came an image of Lok clutching a cross-shaped cord, smiling gently. "Even the holy relics granted in the goddess's name shone brightly in my hand, proving my divine power was real." Lok wondered why she told him to trust the moon. Yushia explained that faith comes from invisible belief, and takes long to manifest. It's always easier to get what you need from something that truly exists. Yusha's gaze softened, her voice drifting into the void. "The moon." She spread her arms as if embracing something. Looking at the sunset outside the window, "It will always be with you." Lok looked in the same direction. "I see, because the goddess is the moon itself." His expression grew serious. "This is a path by which the skeptical can come to believe firmly." Lok bowed fully to Yusha, showing absolute respect. "Sister, from the bottom of my heart, thank you." The memory ended and returned to the presenter. Yusha spoke. "If you wish to express gratitude." She smiled and suggested, "Shall we pray together?" Lok placed a hand on his chest in agreement. "I can do that any number of times." A smile appeared in Yusha's eyes. "You came at the right time. Many people have already gathered." She led Lok into the prayer hall. Indeed, the other clerics were already present. Yusha passed along the pews. She climbed the steps to the large pulpit. Her hand lightly touched a page of scripture. "Very well." Yusha raised her hand in a signal. "Let us pray together." Outside the prayer hall, the full moon rose perfectly, standing out in the night. Yusha clasped her hands tightly, her cheeks flushed. "Great moon." The scene shifted to another space as sunlight flooded the room. Alon Palacio sat there, chin in hand, holding the letter and sighing in boredom. "This letter's nothing special. Just everyday trivialities." He then flopped face down on the desk. "Ah well, that means everyone's living fine. Of course they were fine." He brooded on it. "Everyone's doing well. Yet aside from Yusha, not a single one sent a letter home. It's bittersweet, though understandable." Suddenly Alon Palacio paused in his circling thoughts. "From the children's perspective, I'm just a kindly uncle who helped them despite never meeting." Lying on the desk, he pressed the letter gloomily. "The goal of guiding them to the righteous path, so the world won't be destroyed, is achieved. There's no reason to feel empty." He drifted into a quiet space. Not at all, finding peace in his heart. Then Alon Palacio slowly sat up, marveling that Yucha must be very busy yet diligently writes every month. At that moment he and his inner self felt like polar opposites. Raising 5 children shows only a child can understand a parent's heart. "I'm fine." Across the room even suddenly turned back and asked, "Count, are you busy?" Which made him start and flinch. Alon Palacio cleared his throat and asked, "You still here?" Even holding a paper, replied. Yes, information about the children was just sent from the Information Guild that I wanted to give it to you now, he asked. Is that so? Even slowly stepped toward him and said, about that kid Raiden you asked about the other day. He added, making Alon Palacio look clearly embarrassed. I heard he's become a pirate. He stiffened. What? Tell me the full details from start to finish. Then he thought of the kid. Uncle, are you well? I became a pirate. Even continued the story currently. Those spreading the rumor are Sealang and Diaz. Sealang has achieved a 32-win streak out of 100 floors challenging for the Baba Yaga title. Alon Palacio cut in, curious 32 consecutive wins. Wait, the fighter holding the record for most consecutive wins as he answered Lion King with 41 wins. Another vivid image played of a tense battle. If it's the Lion King joining the team as a teammate in the game, isn't that like a hacked character? He rubbed his chin at those images. Colony possesses such strong fighters that their military strength relies on warriors, yet someone is about to surpass that peak. While he pondered, Even spoke again, and Deuce's Night Order. They defeated Kurga of the White Snow region, one of the 8 chieftains of the Mandi tribe. He turned to Alon Palacio before asking, those are monsters transformed into super beings through sacrificial rites. You know about them, right? A towering figure appeared amid the freezing cold. Alon didn't reply but thought to himself, I know them well. Who in the game I had to fight the Mandi and even deal with their god Ultulus. His face darkened at the thought. Lucky it's not a confrontation now, since Ultulus only appears when the 5 great sins descend. Clearing that is too hard. Finally Alon Palacio spoke up. We don't need to worry about Deuce anymore. Even hearing that, exclaimed, after this he's even rated on par with the top swordsman Reinhardt. He scratched his head and pondered. I should be gone there to meet him in person. I could, reaped a bit of sweet benefit. He pointed out further that Rhine has become an appraiser, saying she can engrave seals to enhance relics' power. A vision of Rhine's mystical appraisal shop appeared. He wore a half-surprised look. So that's a thing too. How interesting. You've investigated thoroughly. Suddenly Alon Palacio's face fell as he said, well then. His expression changed, darkening considerably. What about Raiden? Has he really become a pirate? Even tensed involuntarily about that. Have you heard of the 7 Isles off Laxax? He became the most dominant captain of the Isles, the largest island of the 7 Isles, where the great pirate lords dwell. He clutched his head, pale with horror. Impossible. I had been donating regularly to support that child, and years ago I began to hope he'd live a simple, ordinary life. Yet I hear he took up piracy as an actual profession. Crazy. Even daydreamers wouldn't imagine this. Alon Palacio brooded with tangled thoughts. That online post I once read and laughed off has now become my own reality. He bowed his head and rubbed it sadly. When I sent Raiden off to Laxax I suggested things the boy might like, but not like this. A pirate. His mind conjured a deep blue wave with a figure lying beneath. Raiden has the makings of a captain and excels at salvage, being of the sea god clan, rare on the continent and free to roam underwater. Raiden, barefoot and without protection, diving from the deep Laxax seas, hold many precious relics, so I suggested he become a treasure hunter for a promising future, and even chose salvage-specific gifts. Yet, Even suddenly popped up behind, clapping and interjecting. Becoming a great pirate and captain is tantamount to ruling an island. He's become a figure of real stature. Alon Palacio hesitated. Well, then he grew pensive again. But how did Raiden deal with the captains of the 7 Isles? Images of pirate battles resurfaced in his head. Those captains are superhuman. Among them stood Raiden with a gleaming blade. And the 7 Isles pirates have never lost at sea. Suddenly he had an idea. Maybe he salvaged nothing but top-tier relics from antiquity. Alon Palacio recalled his past. I also spent so much time playing the treasure hunter minigame to get high MGR. Did those crazy buffed items win him the captain's seat? He rubbed his head softly, musing, I know well that nothing in life ever goes exactly as planned. He fell back in his chair as if stunned, this time feeling a peculiar bitterness. This is what a father's heart feels like when his son becomes a pirate despite Ivan's call. Count, are you all right? The scene shifted to another view of the turquoise beach, the heart of the Duchy of Korkia, the giant port city Laxax. Offshore there lies the 7 heavens of the pirates, and among them the greatest paradise is the first archipelago. Then an island unfolded before him with buildings towering like a small empire. But abruptly a sword snapped into the one who once ruled here. The captain, titled the Crimson Chained Great Pirate, Alcrade, who had received the Celestial King's patronage through sacrifice, was now slain. Suddenly a foot stepped forward. Raiden appeared, beaming with his new title, the new captain of the first archipelago. He looked out to the distance, and grew pensive. Finally he sat on the steps and spoke, utterly incomprehensible. He pondered to define it. To what, after all, is the great moon? Raiden stared up at the blazing sky, unable to stop brooding. He never cared enough to think deeply before. Just saw him as a likable uncle. Was that all there was to it? If not for meeting Yusha, I might have died as a biological test slave. Yet I even had my powers unlocked. He remembered the paper he'd been given in truth. Joining the Than Yugayat group was mostly to follow Yusha, so when he received an official order from the Great Moon, he now held it under moonlight and wrestled with it, a truly puzzling command, alone in the silent night. What meaning is there in becoming a treasure hunter? Raiden glared at it, frowning and muttering, even feeling some aversion. While so many people needed his revenge as soon as possible, he recalled his tribe long ago, how the darkness slaughtered them. Hands reached out from the shadows and seized them like prey, people who'd lived peacefully on an unknown island. Then came the scene of relatives butchered. Before his eyes on the continent he had barely escaped tough of the monstrous hunters, killed my greedy parents, and sold me into slavery. They showed no mercy in their torment. Once free of their vile clutch, I realized something. At that time Raiden fled with his face still aghast, standing in silence looking at the distant city. I once thought becoming a treasure hunter, or those gifts, had nothing to do with the revenge I swore. Raiden pondered, and decided he might try feigning obedience to this capricious order. The scene before him turned into a celebration with fireworks shooting into the sky. A regret was too late anyway. He suddenly froze, remembering those wanted posters. Looking closely he realized there was a group of people on that ship. One of them had a cigar clamped in his mouth. Through only chosen great pirates can receive the Celestial King's patronage through sacrifice. O chosen captains of the Seven Isles, endure forever. Raiden's face darkened as he sneered, truly bloodthirsty demons. Then I saw those who killed my parents. They at last have power. The Celestial King. They were spreading lies on purpose. Only through holy rites using parts of the sea, God clan's bodies can it be done. Or more clearly, a majestic God taming countless followers. Powers that could only come from the sea god glared. Those wanted posters fluttered like leaves. Now all the captains of the Seven Isles are using them. Meanwhile the hunters continued celebrating on the ship. Raiden grew sullen, eyes fixed on them. Those wretched hunters. They divided my parents' bodies among themselves. He watched the waves clash and raged inwardly at how they were split into 7 parts to be shared. His silhouette under the blue water felt strangely bleak.